clear on our needs and our messaging. And I think that, you know, the district has done such a good job of accommodating students in spite of the lack of permanent capacity, that the school building was supposed to be built many, many years ago. And now we've gotten used to, oh, wait, but we've lived in these portables for so long. They're like a real part of us, even though they're not. And we spent time before this meeting in work study talking about what and how we would respond, and wanted to open up to the board for their initial reflections of both the bond of 2024 in November, as well as our work study that we talked about. And then we will pivot to talking about what we see as some next steps potentially. But let's try and keep them separate if we can.
I'm going to also make sure that I welcome up Tom Mullins and Martin Train to the podium so we can participate in the dialogue and answer questions as needed.
Thank
you. I guess. And so you're wanting just observations initially, is that?
Yeah, observations,
okay.
Reflections, even of like what we discussed at our meeting about priorities, things to think about, and then future planning steps. Let's leave that for part 2 of the conversation.
Definitely. Well, I think I would second Director Gallinger's comments in terms of thanking everyone for voting. It's unfortunate it did not pass, but we appreciate everyone who did get out to vote, and appreciate those individuals in our community. I think, as we looked at and had the dialogue today, which was helpful, I think, and we'll get more to kind of next steps on this, but, I think we looked at communication, we looked at engaging families. I think for me, one of the big takeaways is how do we engage our younger families, families with elementary age students? How do we get them engaged and helping to tell the story around the bond too? I think there's some clear opportunity there as we've seen, feedback over the course of the last week. So looking forward to exploring that a bit further as well. I know we'll talk next about sort of next steps and kind of focus areas, but I think I'll just say, I know for me specifically, we know that our schools, particularly our high schools, are overcrowded, and that needs to continue to be our messaging as we think about next steps, particularly the fourth comprehensive high school innovation. That's a very important thing. And again, it goes back to my point around engaging our elementary parents. Those are the students who will be impacted by that. Unfortunately, I will say I have high school students and they will not benefit from this, but as a member of the community, we still need to think broadly about all students. But I definitely know that, we know that our elementary students will be positively impacted by the passage of a bond. So some more engagement there, I think, is an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think one of the things, and we heard from our speaker today from the public, is that there are communication difficulties. And it's not just about this issue, it's ongoing. So we have a quarterly report that's supposed to go out to every homeowner in, not homeowner, but every house in the district. So if they're not hearing from us quarterly, that's something I'm reflective of. Like, are there issues with the data that we have that we're not reaching? We don't have a public paper that cares about us. The only paper out there is the Seattle Times, and let me know they don't care about us at all. And so it's hard for us to get our message out. And the second thing is it's quite clear that there is a disbelief that we are in need of a fourth comprehensive high school. And I don't know how to crack that nut, because we have 500 more high school students than we did when we first said we needed this. And they're not going away. Statistically, it looks like we'll have another 1,000 students in the not too long term, not when it comes to the life of a building. So we're not getting fewer students when we look at the demographics, and when we have a demographer come in and look at the future of our district. They're not saying, oh, at this point, you're going to have way fewer high school students if you can just write it out. And I think at this point, I want to hear ultimately not a single email from students saying it is so overcrowded in my school. And I really don't So then I sit back and go, well, then maybe I'm wrong because the students aren't in an uproar about how dense the population is. I think it feeds into we don't need a new high school. The thing is, I fundamentally think that 2,500 students in a building built for 1,900 is overcrowded. But is that just my belief, and how do I communicate that out to somebody else?
My turn. Okay. I'm going to echo some of what Director Moraldo just said, but first of all, obviously we have to be responsive to the voters. We have an outcome of an election, and we received a message that we're going to have to think, be very thoughtful about how we move forward. So, that's a starting point for me. But the need for a new the need for a new high school is imperative, and that need is not going to go away for all the reasons that Director Moraldo just stated. So the major takeaway for me is really we have to do a better job of messaging the need for the new high school. But on the flip side, we are going to have to communicate to the community what the ramifications are going to be if we cannot secure that funding. Because we have a duty as a board to make sure that we have viable learning environments for our kids. And when we have grossly overcrowded high schools, we do not have that. And we will have to make changes at the secondary level. So both of those messages hand in hand, but they have to go together as we move forward.
Dr. Mullins.
There, hopefully you can hear me. I think, for me, maybe my reflection earlier tonight in the work study, which we're talking about, it was not dissimilar to some of the comments around the messaging. What's interesting is the reach of our communication, which was brought up by our speaker tonight. And I would really like to look at those communications and where they're going. I know we receive them on a regular basis, but do we not have the right filter so that community members, I think it's super important for the breadth of our community to be hearing about what's going on in the schools. I know we're doing a significant amount of work. I know the communications department and the district are leveraging as many platforms as they can reach today to do that, whether it's mail or digital or otherwise. And maybe what we need to do is just go back to the old school. What are we putting on the boards at every school so people can see that? So I think that's something definitely to dig into, but I think there's a combination. I think the other thing we're fighting against, frankly, is, which happens a lot for us in Issaquah, is we fight against what is a regional or national narrative. And so one of those is this loss of student message that becomes true based on how often people see it. And I think the reality is students go somewhere, and we're one of those cases where students are coming to us. They're particularly coming to us in the secondary time frame of their career. And so we're seeing our schools grow, and where that national or regional message is around shrinkage. And so I think there's probably something that we need to tell there. I think what's also maybe unfortunate about maybe the reach or clarity of our communication is when we leverage capital funds to do capital projects in the near term because we have security concerns or a hardening of security we know we need to do and can do. I think it's unfortunate that message is heard in anything but us trying to make sure we are covering our very immediate and real needs. So I think there is a fair bit about how we're reaching with communication, where that's targeted, but also how we more clearly articulate the difference of what's happening in our district from some of the regional or national messages. Because I think to Director Moraldo's point, without having a local media coverage for us, people take those things to be true. So I think those are some of my reflections. Certainly, I think we still know we need to fund improvements to our schools. We absolutely need to deal with what is a clear overcrowding, and I think we will. And I think there's lots of ways that we need to talk about going forward on how to do that. But I take the message that the first package didn't work. I think we will figure out what the next one looks like.
Okay, yeah, Eva.
So Director Ronaldo, you talked about how we're kind of lacking a bit of a student voice on the need. And I go to Issaquah High School, I'm a junior, and so I wanted to provide a little bit of insight on that. While I don't think students are necessarily going to school and thinking about it every single day, I think that in the experiences of a student, the signs are definitely there that our school is overcrowded. And you can see that in like a couple different ways. Like I know that when I go to the lunchroom, for example, after class, I have to run down there because there are so many students that the tables will fill up, and then you go upstairs and there's students who just need to sit on the floor because there's no space for them. Or I know there are certain classes, the more popular classes, where my friends have said that desks and seats will fill up. And so there were some where the desks are being crowded into the room, or there just aren't enough desks for the students that are there. Or if you look at classes that are, again, quite popular, and you need to go in for flex time or nest time to talk with the teacher or make up a test, those things have to be booked very, very quickly because the slots do fill up rapidly. And so I think that while I'm sitting in class, I may not be thinking about this, but there are definitely signs, and I think students are definitely noticing.
Naomi?
Hi, hello? Adding on to Alva's point, yeah, throughout my whole high school career, I didn't really think about overcrowding of my school because I simply assumed that was the way it was supposed to be. Because moving up from elementary school to middle school to high school, there's more and more students each time. So when I moved into Issaquah High School, freshman year, I assumed that that was just what high school was like. It was supposed to be that many students. It was supposed to be that crowded. And it wasn't until I realized that like our school was built for like a third, 2/3 of what it is now, that I realized, oh, maybe it is a bit crowded because there's so many more students in the classes and the teachers are so busy and the lunchrooms are so full. And that's when I started realizing, but because it's my everyday experience and because it's not talked about much within the school community itself, it didn't seem as much as a forefront problem as others. So that's my take on it.
Thank you for that. You know, I think for me, the reflection is I personally feel a moral obligation to all of you. Like all of you are why that I'm here. And I think all of us sitting at this table on both sides are here for you guys. And so I feel a moral obligation to have a learning environment that will maximize your potential. And right now, our staff are doing great things as best as they can, but it's not optimal. And having kids sit on the floor at lunch, not optimal. We have that even in our overcrowded elementary schools. Yes, we have overcrowded elementary schools, even in spite to what you just said, Sydney. Like there are many of our elementary schools that are overcrowded and kids sit on the floor. Like we have kids that can't get after school help because to your point, like all of the slots are filling up and there is no time to do that. I know my student at Skyline, like her classes have 68 students in them for her block classes. And that's just really hard. So I continue to have a moral obligation. And I think that we do have to tighten our message up. But what I heard clearly is like the tax rate is too high. And so for me, in this discussion that we've had that you shared with us, we want to bring forward a package that says like we hear you and we want to bring back a package that says no tax rate change. And I think from what I heard from your team tonight that we can do that still is inclusive of our comprehensive high school number 4, that is inclusive of the career preparation that we believe is critical. And one of the big reasons why we want to pull students out of Issaquah and Skyline is so we can repurpose that space to make it into career preparation space for you to actually learn in. And we can't build there's no portables that we could turn into a computer science or mechatronics lab. Those don't exist. And so I think people forget like, oh, just put a portable. Like for one, there's no space on this Issaquah campus to put a portable, period. 2, we can't go build that innovative space that we need in a portable. So I think those 2 things are really important to me. And then safety and security. But I would say the first step is to hear really clearly, like I heard like the board needs to stop repurposing things. This is what the voters approved, so it should go towards that. And so tonight, I am asking the district to pause any work on what was what the board had repurposed the $44 million. It was the voters approved in 2022 for the fourth comprehensive high school, to pause all that work and say, we will pause on doing any vestibule security entrances at all of our high schools. We will pause looking to acquire land now in the south end of our district. And say, okay, we hear you. That would then decrease the need of additional funding for our high school to $138 million. If you do that coupled with innovation and then the safety and security needs, and so let's put it up to a vote. So if the community was frustrated that they didn't get to vote on the vestibules, then we'll put it on the ballot and let them vote. If that's what's important to them, then we will pause that work and say, we hear you. That 44 million can go towards the high school. So now the total that we have sitting in our accounts is roughly $134 million sitting, waiting to build that high school. And then that will effectively be roughly in the mid 230s for $230 million ish range for a high school innovation phase 1, because we can't do the renovations for Skyline and Issaquah till we actually move students out of those wildly overcrowded buildings. But we can build and begin work at Liberty. And then for safety and security for all of our schools. That would be what I would like to see us move forward in a multi-step process tonight, and would love to hear from other board members on what that would look like, as well as then obviously we'll get administrative input. But I think hearing really clearly from our voters about the tax increase being too much, that this would be much, much different.
I think those are definitely the priorities that I have. Really looking at, because I think otherwise we have to make difficult decisions on trying to alleviate the overcrowding. And I don't think those are the decisions I want to be making. And so I think really prioritizing those issues, safety and security for all students. And frankly, I think also reducing overcrowding is part of safety and security for our high schools, but really about innovation. And, as I enter into this coming year, I really want to see fundamental change on how we're supporting our high school students as they're doing those last 4 years that we have them, and what's going to happen beyond here. And that's so much of what this is about. So it's not just about having a fourth high school to reduce the overcrowding. It's about what we're doing at all of those high schools to prepare all students. And we do a fantastic job of preparing four-year college bound students. And I want us to have the same level of action and support for students that are going into the trades, that students are going into retail or food services when they go out of school, students that are looking at two-year college because they don't have the finances to be able to attend a four-year college and want to be able to work during that time and have a good certificated position. So there's so much that we want to do. And I think that was hard to communicate as well, because we were still shaping so much of that while we were driving forward and saying we want this bond to change things. But I think that now that that's getting becoming more tangible, that we can speak to it, that this is about fundamentally changing what we have for all students.
Great. Sydney?
So I think there's a few things from my perspective. I think one, I think we have an opportunity to get a little bit more insight from folks in the breadth of the community. So I think there's an opportunity for us to open up a survey or to get some additional insights as well, so that we understand more shaping on people's why or what's most important. I certainly want to make sure that we are re-engaging with the bond committee that was a part of the process and make sure we're hearing from them and their thoughts as well. But I think there is a great and story there of broader community input. I couldn't agree more that I think we have an obligation to prepare the students and the young people that come in our district for the world of work and the multiple ways that they may get there, whether that's military or trades or other ways. And today we are frankly not doing that as well as we can. I think there's a number of ills we've talked about. Like one of the chief ways to keep our students and our schools safe is to make sure, I think, Harlan, you often say it is name, strength, and need, is to be able to know who our students are. And at the size of our schools, that is a challenge for us. And so I think we have to address that and realize it's not just about another building, but it is about how we provide programming as our student reps so nicely put it this evening. So I think there's an opportunity to bring that up. I think there's also an opportunity to reevaluate a number of things. I appreciate you laying out clarity of putting funds in the place that I guess they were originally approved as one. But I think we also, need to evaluate revenue generating opportunities based on assets the district holds as well, and make sure we're clear on how we might leverage some assets we have in order to fund projects we think are critical. And I think there's frankly a lot of acreage on that site. And so I'd like for us to have a real evaluation of what that might look like as well.
Dr. Quinn.
I agree with everything that was said already, in full agreement with that. I think one of the things I'll continue to add is I think we have an opportunity to engage more members of our community in terms of telling this story. I think that was clear. And I think we have to continue to figure out what channels that would be. I think obviously duly noted, I think, we have a lot of voters in our community who don't have students who are currently in our schools. So we need to make sure that we're doing a good job of communicating with them. So I think that's an opportunity. One thing I want to talk about, not saying I'm in disagreement with this, but the repurposing of the 44 million, and I'm going to say this selfishly as a high school parent, those vestibules are important. And so I agree that we will hold off on that, but there is risk. And I think our community needs to understand just the significant importance of that at Liberty, at Skyline, at Issaquah High. The idea behind that is a safeguard for individuals that are coming in and out of our high schools. And so I think there is some risk in not doing that immediately, like we had talked about. But again, if this is what we need to do to continue to focus on high school innovation, the fourth high school, I'm in support of that. But I just want to make sure the community understands that and understands why that we as a board determined that there was a need for that repurposing, because there's a safety concern. So just want to make sure we're aware of that.
Thank you.
Just a few thoughts to add. Totally agree with Director Mullings. I really do want the insight for our community. Hope the community will engage us over the next month or two as we are trying to gain feedback about what the impressions of the bond or how we could do better, message better, all those things. So I look forward to that conversation. One thing I do just want to point out too is this is the right approach, I think, about narrowing our focus to what I heard during the work session, all identified as the imperative, the high school, career pathway, innovation, those things. So it's nice that we can focus the attention on those issues for the next go around. But I also want the community to understand that there's a timing issue here too, that the district put a lot of effort into permitting that project that took a long process and a lot of money. And those permits are going to expire. And it just pains me to think that we might lose the benefit of that work that has already occurred if we don't act to build this school. So that's my own personal belief. Anyway, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we missed that window of April of 25. We're gonna add $50 million of additional costs to build that high school on what is already a very expensive project. And I think we do need to offer a clear choice because we can no longer keep the schools at the size they are, right? We know students are still coming, so where are you gonna put another 200 students at Issaquah High School? Like, so it's not gonna happen. So I would ask that the district come up with feasibility on reconfiguring our whole student population to a K-6, 7 through 9, 10 through 12 configuration. All high schools, including Gibson Neck, Liberty, Issaquah, and Skyline, because that's the reality where we are. That would take Issaquah and Skyline to the student population size that the building was intended for. And so we would be moving our 9th grade teachers and our 9th grade students to the middle schools. We'd be moving our 6th grade teachers and our 6th grade students to the elementary schools. And so we moved out of that scenario in order to more seamlessly pursue acceleration for our students during that key moment when they're transitioning from 6th, 7th, 8th to 9th grade, and to support a more seamless experience with athletics and activities. But if the community doesn't want to prioritize that, we have to, above all, keep and have a moral obligation for the safety and security of our students. And part of it is having the right side of a student body inside of a building. The other part, feasibility, I would like you to look is there was more than a decade ago, there was a freshman campus because of Issaquah and Skyline were too big. So to look at what would it be to reconfigure Pacific Cascade back to a freshman campus and put all freshmen from Issaquah and Skyline in that building. So those are the two things that I would like you to look at, because to what I've heard my colleagues say, we still have to move forward. And if the community isn't willing to invest in another high school capacity, then we have to address it in other ways. And those may not be popular with our students and families, but it doesn't change the fact that the need is there. And we're going to have to do something. And we can't keep doing the same thing that we're doing and expect different results. So those are the feasibility things that I would like you to look at. And then the third one that I heard from my board colleagues, so I'll just raise it, is reboundary. And so to reboundary our schools, to send more schools potentially to Liberty, but Liberty was built smaller and is still over capacity. And so I think what was asked is if you would provide a percentage of overcapacity from the permanent capacity of each of our buildings, which student population is today, as well. So maybe none of these things, you will come back to us and say, well, they are not feasible for these, and these reasons, but they're going to become feasible more and more if we can't pass a bond to address capacity. And that's just the reality that we need to know, because I think that's what wasn't discussed at all for the November bond was like, what's next? So people are asking us what's next. So this is the kickoff of that conversation. This is what's next. This is what happens in communities where we don't pass bonds. Like, it impacts student education. It's cascading K through 12. And it's going to impact every student and family in our district, because it is, in the way that building a 4th high school would have relieved pressure across our whole district. Not building that 4th high school is going to have us have to address the pressure across our whole district.
Yeah, thank you for adding that last one about rebounding, because I think we do need to look at, equitable overcapacity, right? So if Issaquah High is at 30% overcapacity, but another school is at 15, that in and of itself causes some issues. Also, what I would like to know, because I know that I've heard this before, and I think it was something that was talked about a long time ago when they were looking to pass the bond for Skyline, was because I don't know how it works, is this whole parsing schools so that some come early, some come late. What is that model? What does it look like? Is it even feasible? Because because it's those central core spaces, or, what are the ramifications of something like that? So I think that's the one we didn't talk about, but because I don't understand the mechanics of it and the benefits of it. So if I could get some information about that too.
Or double shifting. So 4th scenario, I think what people don't realize is that our teachers, unlike any other district that I know of in our state, don't have their own classrooms. and they don't have their own classrooms because in the period that they would have planning period, another teacher is using that classroom. So we are using every space at every moment that exists in our high schools. And so there's no breathing room for anyone. And so this is not just about for our students, it's also for our staff. I mean, I can't imagine them having to cart around, and seeing the video where we have a biology teacher having to like shuttle through passing time to get to another class to set up labs. That's mind blowing to me.
I'd also be curious too, and I don't know if this might be something that the district would have to follow up with us on, but the concept that Director Gallinger mentioned around 6th grade at the elementary level and then moving 9th grade to the middle school, or kind of a junior high model. My sense is that that's sort of moving back in time. I think the trend, we've looked at like Washington, North Shore School District have moved to a model like ours. So I want to make sure that the community understands that too, that would be moving back and not in a direction that local districts are moving in. So I think we need to have that information too, because I think all of this, equipping our community with information, understanding again what the alternatives are if we can't pass a bond, is helpful, I think, in making a decision. I know being an informed voter is important. So I appreciate that information too.
Yeah, the community that I grew up in moved from a junior high system to a middle school 9 through 12 system when they built their second high school after I graduated. So yes, that's exactly how it works.
I think that's the trend. Yes, my sense is that's the trend. I think it's, again, be good to have that information just so that we could inform our members of our community.
Versus the neighboring district, Puyallup School District is still in a 10-12 system because they can't pass a bond. And so that's why they are there. Yes, Sheeta.
Also, I have a question. So earlier in this meeting, it was mentioned that our elementary schools are overcrowded as well. So how would we how would we even consider fitting in a whole nother grade level into our elementary schools if they're already facing these overcrowding issues?
Yeah, some of our elementary schools are overcrowded, but I think what it's doing is it's equitably addressing the overcrowding. So it's not just disproportionately in 3 of our buildings. And then it's across the 26 of our buildings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for that.
I would say, in hearing this, a couple things. One is the direct mailing publication that does come out is Focus, and that comes out twice a year. And so there are a handful of people who have opted out of our mailings. And so if someone has opted out of our mailings, then we have to honor that request. So I want to share that is the primary direct mail mechanism, and it's a budget thing, right? So we had to have 3 years of budget reductions. And then there was also other challenges with not having a local paper anymore. So noted, and we can take that into account as we consider our resource allocation moving into next year as well for what kind of direct mailings we do. Because I do understand the point that while many things have moved online, not all things. So it's a very fair point, but I wanted to clarify that part about mailings and direct mail and what information we provide as a district to all residents of the Issaquah School District boundaries. As it relates to this conversation for the structures of schools, boundaries, all of these technical pieces to level out the number of students in each building in a equal manner is at odds, right, with our goals of building schools in our community that are able to serve our kids based on learning. So I say that because that is the implication, what I take away from this conversation around when we started to spread students out like peanut butter equally across all of our schools, we're not taking into the accounts about robust programming, neighborhoods, and in a way that honors, right, the history already of how our neighborhoods have been constructed. So I think that's going to be that's a big conversation. And we were asked about what are the contingency plans in the different meetings. And you're right, this is the time to have that conversation. And at this point, I can say we would have to move into more technical ways of approaching learning versus adaptive and visionary, which is what is actually required to be able to meet the needs of our students, what our parents have asked us for, what the board has asked our district for, and that actually prepares them for the world that is currently the current world at stake. We are not in the 1980s. We're not in the 1990s. We're in a totally different era of what's required for people to be successful in the world. And our schools are the intersection of so many more needs. I just talked about the basic needs back to school resource, or the back to school resource fair, which was about meeting the basic needs of our community. I just talked about the Issaquah Schools Foundation partnering with us to help meet more of those needs, and we are still not meeting all the needs. And the schools cannot do it alone.
Well, I agree with you. If like our role as elected school board members is represent our community. If our community wants and is now saying in 2024 and going forward, they want something different. I think we have to give them what that difference is as at least as options. And so then they know by voting X, I'm actually getting this. And that's clarity that I think they need. And they need to know if that's the direction that our community wants to head, then it's our job to honor that. So but I don't disagree with what you said. So, oh, sorry. I didn't see hands. I'm sorry. Hava.
I just kind of wanted to add, coming up to election, or like voting time, I talked with a lot of adults in my community, and a sentiment that I heard a lot of from adults who I all know voted yes on the bond, out of a principle of voting for public schools, not necessarily for the bond, was that they felt like the district didn't do a good job of communicating how the improvements and where the money was going to help student and improve student education. Not that they didn't think it wasn't going to, but because they felt that the district didn't do a good job of communicating that. They felt like it really was just, this is how much money we need, this is what we're going to spend it on, but not a real concrete why. The things that you're talking about in this meeting didn't feel clearly communicated in any way. So those people all did vote yes, but not because they felt like they understood the purpose of the bond, simply because of their loyalty to district and to public schools.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's why you hear us talking about just narrowing the focus, like to be laser focused on this, because then the messaging it's either a thumbs up, thumbs down versus, and to what Director Taylor said before, all the needs that you guys provide to us, we're not like, oh, these are nice to haves. So what that does mean is that the capital levy that's in 2026 is going to look very different, because those hundreds of $1 millions of modernization, like for instance, example, $18 million for Skyline's roof, like Skyline needs a new roof. Skyline needs a new HVAC. Like if you've been in Skyline High School, some classrooms are really cold and some classrooms are really hot. And in 2024, in the class school district, that just shouldn't be the case, but that is what it is, because it has been a piecemeal building, because that's how public education is funded, whether we like it or not. So those needs don't magically go away. And so the 2026 capital levy is going to look very different, but we heard very clearly from the community, modernization things should go in levy. Like, okay, well, in 2026, it may be a surprise for y'all. So I think before I move on for more steps, I would like to hear from your team about what's the feasibility of us putting forward a package that's about a third of what the one that was in November of this year, to be able to meet our desire to have no tax rate change.
So before Martin Cherney starts, I do want to say that it's been very helpful to hear this discussion and to get the feedback. And we have gotten feedback. I've gotten outreach on multiple fronts from different parts of our community, both formally and informally, about the bond. And I do think that the tax sensitivity is a really important component of how we have heard the community as well. So this discussion only affirms that. And how we can, do always a better job, right, of how we communicate and what information's out there. So that is loud and true. I also want to say that people have also shared their frustration that there was a lot of other information that was conflicting, right? And so we want to work hard to ensure that we resolve those tension points or conflict points as well. So we are very resolved in supporting the next steps coming out of this meeting, and sort of hearing also from the community about what feedback they might have, right, in reaction to what comes out of tonight. And then I do want to just note here our deep appreciation for my deep appreciation for our team members, our capital projects and communications team, and the teachers, PTSAs, our labor partners, all of the folks that helped support the work. And our business partners and many of our community leaders as well. So it's just been a huge, I think, buoy, with half the community approving and half the community not. There's obviously two sides, right, to the feedback story. And so a lot of people are also looking forward to how they can help next as well. And then I can let Martin. Go ahead.
It's like we're back in COVID again.
Okay, but Martin, if you want to also share anything else that you wanted to reflect on from this, and in addition to answering Director Gallanger's question prompt.
Well, I'll echo the thanks for the communications and capital projects team. Did tremendous work. Really appreciated. I did hear, so what I'm echoing back is I hope what you provided, a package that would include a high school, the innovation capacity for career preparation and safety and security, somewhere in the mid $230 million range. And to our advantage now, we do have 2025 assessed value information for the district, so that will be helpful in making those projections. And I'm fairly confident in the movement away from where the amount was to this amount, that we would be in that range of where the combined tax rate for the district is going forward. So, and we can project out what that would look like to keep it stable.
One thing I'll add is that there are some aspects of some of the building aspects that do relate to safety and security. So if there's a roof that is in dire need of specifically getting replaced versus just getting patched up, we can consider that, as well as some of the athletic surfaces of the tracks. We want to make sure the same way we had redone the Issaquah High School track and so forth. So there are other pieces that relate to safety and security that I want to just name that might be helpful to consider, but I wanted to put that forward in front of the board.
So while I think people in the community would know that I'm pretty darn supportive of athletics and repurposing, or not using, wrong word, using board reserve money in order to get those accelerate those projects at Issaquah High School last year. I don't think that I want any turf or track in this. Like, I think that still sends the wrong message. And while I agree with you, safe environments are super important, and I was pro lights at all of our feeder pattern middle schools, I think we need to stay actually very narrowly focused. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, I'm not only one of 5 voice. So I don't think that would make it for me. I also don't think a leaky roof would make it either. I mean, I think we heard pretty clearly about that. And because 25 to 26, we're talking a year. And if we have to pull operational dollars out, we need to tell that story. I mean, if for some reason there's a $5 million roof that we have to do a repair on, and then therefore we have less operational dollars, that is being responsive to the message that we heard very clearly from the community. And so I want to honor what I heard and really honor it, like shrinking this package to like a third of what it was. So I philosophically agree with what you just said, but I want to be very narrowly focused. So then we know really clearly, because I think there was so much in the package. Was it really truly the high school that, like, we're not voting for this because it's high school? Or was it really the tax rate that was really big? And so I think that narrow focus will help us a lot. And I think going out to the community through a thought exchange or what other mechanism you recommend, like really soon, would be helpful, because I think there's an appetite here for us to go forward for February ballot. And so that would require a really quick turn, given the fact that there's 1 full week of school left, and then it's Thanksgiving, and then we come back and have a few days before our only meeting in December. And I know then there may be a special meeting that has to happen as well in order to have more dialogue about it, but we won't know until we get some early community feedback on what this could look like. And if there's other alternatives or suggestions that people have, besides a thought exchange, to get it out. And I would ask that you get out widely to beyond just our school community, to as many people as you can outside of our school community, to be able to participate that. And I know when we had a really successful one, when it was about bell times, we had like 10,000 people participate in that. And we would really like to see that, because I think that this is really that that implication for what happens when we don't go forward with this project is going to make bell time change look like nothing. So, board thoughts? Yes, Director Taylor.
I just want to reiterate that I completely support what you just said, that I think we need to be as narrow as focused as we possibly can on the messaging that we're going forward with. Because what we have all been saying now for 3 hours, I think, is that the messaging was convoluted for the community. I think we understand that. So I think it's just really important that we're very crisp on what we're trying to achieve. So that's all.
I think I feel the same way, really being laser focused on what it is we're putting forward. I also think we are, when it comes to messaging, we have a whole different message when we go and meet with our legislators. Because $317 million worth of this bond was, was the building piece of it. And a strong portion of that is related to the Clean Buildings Act, which, because we didn't pass this, we will be in violation of, and it's nearly $1 million a year fine. That's coming out of operational dollars. And I will tell you that as somebody who was presenting this bond information and bond package, I did not know that until today, that we're now going to be facing that fine, and when does it start, and that it's coming out. So I never used that as a talking point. But we need to be clear with our legislators that this is an unfunded mandate. The building changes they're not willing to fund, and yet they're not going to give us any funding for the fines that we're going to incur. More money will go to the state that will then not come back to this district.
And on that point, this is a side point, but I think we're going to have a very different discussion in a couple of weeks about our legislative priorities based on the outcome of this bond and what we need from our legislators about supermajorities and Clean Building Act exemptions and all of these things. That I think we have a little bit different lens. So just setting the stage for the conversation to come.
Oh, that's a good point. And I think that, one of the maybe unintended or better outcomes that will happen of this is that we will have a lot of momentum go into this session to say needs to be constitutional change to change the voting standard for bonds, especially in general election time. And I know there's already appetite and belief in the legislation for that. And this results in the 2024 legislative elections only further support that. So I think that conversation is going to be real. And I think the messaging of if Issaquah can't pass this, and there's very interesting, if you look at the King County results, the 4 school districts that had capital measures, they were all within a very tight range of where they all landed across this whole region. So it was very interesting to look at the electorate. So you were going to say something?
Yes, I was just going to agree, Director Gallinger, with what you said too. I want to make sure our messaging is laser focused. We've talked about the need for the 4th comprehensive high school. High school innovation is very important. I do think it's good for us to have this conversation and appreciate Superintendent Tauyuk mentioning some of the things that will be a risk that we won't be including. So it's good to know that as a community. But again, as a board, collectively, we're saying, here's the focus. And we want to make sure that that's very clear. But we also need to make sure we understand what those risks are, because a roof leaking and having to patch that, there's clearly risk if we're not dealing with that. And as I said earlier, as a high school parent now, the vestibules, that is a concern. We need to be very clear. And if you're not a student in a high school in one of our 3 comprehensive high schools, or you're a parent there, you probably don't understand how easy it is to get in and out of those doors. And that is worrisome to me. So want to make sure that that's very clear. We understand what those risks are, but again, agree with the approach that you outlined.
No? Okay. Yes, Director Miranda.
I just had one statement that I had made during our work study, but I wanted to say publicly is that I still think that as a board member, I want to acknowledge that there are people who are still mistrustful of the board. And so we need to admit that publicly, that whether it be COVID response, whether it be the reallocation of funds, whether it be, I've already voted for this high school twice, why are you asking for more? I recognize all of those things. All of those things are true. And so there is a general mistrust. So I don't know that it was all about taxation, because this is the same set of people that did not repeal taxes that the state, that they had an opportunity to, and didn't repeal taxes that they're sending to the state. So this is a local issue, and the local community is telling us locally, we're not sure that we want your taxes. So I think that's important for us to acknowledge, and as a board, work through how do we communicate that we hear that, we understand that. I still would love to have more information, that the sheet that we created, that your staff created, that says what was the original price of a building? What was the ultimate cost? We looked at that, but I don't know how that's fully gotten implemented, or how that will be implemented for future bond projects. Because that was a clear communication tool. That was transparency that we had not had over the years. And so I do think that whatever we can do to communicate how we're going to be transparent is going to be very, very important.
I would say to immediately follow up on that, I mean, we have a new finance team that is running things, and so our numbers do look very different. And speaking as the person who pushed back really hard against the 22 capital levy, because I didn't agree with the district numbers and projections for what the high school was going to cost, and that we would be in this position. Like, we are in this position, and I call that out then. So I agree, but I would say that, and then the board, I mean, the board looks different than it did in 2022. And so there is a lot of learning, and hopefully people understand we hear really clearly what the message is. And so I think we want to be responsive to all of them, like including what you just said. But I think that we have been. Now, how clearly we gotten the message out that we hear you, not very clear, but to your point, like, how do we get that message out? We would love help in knowing, like, how do we actually get the message out about all the amazing things that our teachers and students are doing, because it's actually pretty incredible. And that's really why we're all here. And I think we don't want to lose sight of that in spite of all this less joyous conversation, it doesn't change the fact that our students are doing great things in this district. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I just wanted to highlight like one part, like one of my experiences. I had a brief internship at Issaquah High School. And it was with Julia Bamba and one of the teachers with the micro school. And I am a high schooler, so I look like a high schooler. And I was just completely able to walk into Issaquah High School. Someone like opened the door for me. They like didn't direct me to the office. I could have just like completely walked in. And I guess I just wanted to highlight my like concern on the fact that we won't have the safety and security update. Will that be like one of the top priorities? Because I know in the bond, one of the top things was the safety and security, specifically like the doors and the entrances in the office and such, like going straight into the office instead of into the school, because that it's I don't know, it just didn't feel like a safe environment for me. And with all the like feedback that I feel like we've been receiving from the other students, that they don't feel as safe in their schools anymore, that could be something. So I guess I just want to know where, like with all the cutbacks that we're obviously thinking about doing in order to pass like 200 and something million to figure out what we're going to do, like what the top priorities are in order, because I think that a lot of students agree that should be a big one. So I just want to make sure that that's like on everybody's minds.
Milo, I appreciate you saying that. So we're saying we're pausing that right now. So we are gonna not repurpose that for that. And we heard really clear from the community, don't do that. So that work is paused, and it will be then in the bond, and people, if the community wants to vote on it, then they will vote on it, and we'll give them that chance. So be very clear, very laser focused. High school capacity, career preparation, safety and security. And it's really all about our high school environments for the most part. So I don't know if you have a summary of next steps that you hear from all of the herding cats.
Appreciate all of the voices, and I appreciate all those that also have provided public input, as well as reached out to everyone here to provide input about the bond itself. And so it's very helpful. We look forward to moving forward. Next steps, I heard a no tax rate increase as a sort of key sort of boundary. I heard a request for how we might look at the different structure of schools as part of contingency planning and bringing forward that. And I think you gave some examples of how to repurpose a site or two, right? But also think about how those rate allocations could then be reconfigured and with that a boundary change, because that I think they all tie hand in hand, how we assign students to buildings with a potential structure in mind. And then very loud and clear on the narrow focus. And I was testing sort of other ideas that would come up, right? Because we will get asked those questions at some point. So I wanted to get the input of the full board. And then, high school capacity, career preparation, safety and security.
The one thing I was gonna just want to confirm is the February target. Is that right?
I think I would like to target towards that, and it's easier to pivot away from that, but we have one chance to do that, and that would be our next board meeting. And so I think for me, it would be really helpful here to hear if you can launch a thought exchange next week and we can start to get preliminary data shortly after Thanksgiving. That would be informative to me for that. I think that for us to walk away would say like, oh, well, it wasn't actually that important. And we're actually saying the opposite. We're saying like it is critically important. And that's why we're bringing it back to you at the next available election time in a much smaller package that has much, 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 much less tax implication and addresses critical needs that we have. And we know that there's going to be a community discussion in 2026 for all the building modernization projects that still need to happen as part of the levy planning for 26 capital levy. Director Mullins.
So in the list of things, what I don't want to lose sight of, and I think the thing that for me is really important is getting some sense of revenue generating opportunities from the assets. Right, we've got a gap to close. We should figure out how we do that in all the creative ways, and if that includes parsing and developing at the sites we have, we should consider that.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you for expanding about those opportunities for revenue generating. And then we will be using then this conversation to inform the wording and then the launch of a thought exchange, and we can do that. We're already queued up. We had been thinking about how to get feedback too. So this is a helpful focus point for us to do in that way. So thank you.
Any final thoughts from our students or our board before I move on to the next agenda item? Certainly don't want to stifle that. Nope. Okay. Thank you for that. Next item on our agenda is high school innovation and career preparation.
Great, thank you. As Lisa Neighbors, our Director of Career and Technical Education, in short known as CTE, is coming up to the podium. I do want to share that Julia Bamba is out of the office today, so Lisa is our lead presenter. I'll supplement as needed on this, but the two go hand in hand. You know, we have been using high school innovation and career preparation almost synonymously. And so I'm always constantly saying what we mean by high school innovation is around building upon the already great foundation we have for career technical education and expanding opportunities to be work ready. I know I've heard the board talk about, you know, it's not just the 4 years that we have them in the final 4 years of their experience with us through 12th grade. And it's about how our students launch beyond that. So with that, I think it's important that we continue to keep this conversation front and center. There are things that we can do consistently to make those shifts. While the bond is a helpful component of that, because building facilities, capacity, and tie very hand in hand with learning experiences, we can go deeper and explore, and that we have many levers, right, to continue to advance this work. I do want to share that we do have some news that the Issaquah Schools Foundation will be funding the school district for the amount of $10,000 to help with our first step in coordinating more opportunities for internships. I know we've talked a lot about how we can have more internship experiences, like the way the model at Gibson Neck already has. And so there will be $10,000 to support staffing to help support and coordinate a summer internship program that will be available to juniors and seniors at Liberty, Issaquah, and Skyline High School. So that's our first test to sort of increase our ability to provide supports for workforce readiness and career exploration. So with that, as a preface, I'll pass it to Lisa Neighbors.
Thank you. Lisa Neighbors, CTE Director. So I want to begin this evening. We have a CTE four-year plan on the consent agenda, and as you may have noticed, some of the items continue to be related to the bond measure. We bear options for expansion in mind as we plan forward, and many of the points in the four-year plan will be covered in this presentation. So our purpose this evening is to share progress and preview opportunities. Our work with the high school and beyond plan teacher-led lessons this year is causing students to gain exposure to Zello, which is our high school and beyond plan and a career exploration platform. Students are exploring careers of interest starting in the 7th grade. The goal of these activities is to encourage students to begin thinking about electives they can take in middle school that will lead them to gain experience and skills for high school or begin to cross options off their career list. At the high school level, we're gaining more insight into certification credentials students may be able to earn, which lead to additional stackable opportunities, or in some cases, directly to the workforce. Due to this more intentional delivery of the high school and beyond plan lessons, we're beginning to receive information on careers of interest from schools which have already implemented the lessons. All 9th graders have completed their first lesson, as well as some 6th and 7th graders. Using this more robust set of data, we're asking high schools to add exploratory courses in criminal justice and business law for fall of 2025. We're also reviewing CTE course competencies and curriculum to intentionally align to more certifications. For example, we've already adjusted the web design course to better match an information and technology, HTML and cascading style sheet certification. Stephen, can we pull up Zello? So I'm going to give you a quick overview of a lesson in Zello. What we have down here in the corner is where the teacher-led lessons can be found. For anybody interested in exploring those, you just click that. It opens a PowerPoint that has some audio recording in it. When you click on the Explore, students can explore a wide variety of careers, schools, majors, and pathways, which include 2-year college, 4-year college, as well as technical training and apprenticeship. If you go back to home, there's a quick sample of the types of, of the types of career resources that students have access to. It looks like my video vanished. That's fun. Go ahead and click this one and see. We'll just run like 5 to 7 seconds.
Kevin, you have to see this hilarious cat video I just found.
Oh, I love cat videos.
Do you feel that pressure mounting in your chest? It
Oh,
can
this
take
is
hold
just
of your
pre-roll.
life and never let go, like a virus, following you all day and watching you while you sleep. This is the crippling world of debt, and it's coming.
Okay.
No, Beth.
So all of the videos and resources in the Zello platform are screened by Zello for use by students. Excuse me. If we can go back to the PowerPoint, please. Beautiful. And then perfect. Thanks. So our recent 9th grade Zello activity has provided information on what pathways 9th graders are considering. Most students with at least one plan in Zello are intending to go to a 2- or 4-year college or university. The top 4 saved careers in Zello continue to be lawyer, aerospace engineer, doctor, and software engineer. And the top 4 careers are the same in each comprehensive high school, but they're in a slightly different order at each. This is just a reminder that we want to make sure we're preparing students to go into careers with high demand and livable wages. And then this is what we've been sharing and kind of refining along the way, offering robust exploratory courses at each of the high schools, such as Introduction to Engineering Design, Criminal Justice, and Business Law. If a student chooses, they may dive deeper in the areas highlighted in the salmon color, which also have exploratory courses. Currently, the deep dive courses include a robust suite of marketing, business, and finance courses with a capstone of AP or IB economics. Information technology allows students to prepare deeply for careers coding in multiple languages, all of which allow students to pursue multiple pathways after high school. The fine arts offerings are robust across the district with a plan for building out more opportunities to align with student interest. And the credential pathway programs have been narrowed to a set of offerings that align with a parent-student interest, utilize existing facilities, and further strengthen areas already experiencing success. So at Issaquah High School, we plan to better align with the physical therapy assistant program at Lake Washington Institute of Technology. At Liberty, we can utilize the existing metal fabrication shop and layer on an aerospace manufacturing Core Plus program. And at Skyline, strengthening the IT pathway by adding networking and cybersecurity will round out a group of high-demand careers in which Skyline students demonstrate interest. In the trades, we can expose students to aspects of the trades through one of the Core Plus options. We've also been talking to Renton Technical College about potentially offering some cohort courses in their advanced manufacturing fields, such as commercial building engineering and refrigeration, building maintenance, or machining. Having prior experience in an aspect of trades may provide students an advantage when pursuing apprenticeship-only trades, such as plumbing and general electrician. So this is just an example of a possible pathway for a student utilizing multiple stackable credentials. This student with a family background in aerospace has indicated they're interested in becoming an aerospace engineer. They explore a STEM elective in 8th and 9th grade while earning the Autodesk certified user in Fusion 360. The students' electives in 10th and 11th grade allow them to further explore aspects before deciding to take Core Plus aerospace manufacturing in the 12th grade to gain experience in some of those technical requirements that could get them that job as a technical designer 1 at Blue Origin directly out of high school. So this is an overview, several current job postings which align to stackable credentials in high demand careers. And these jobs also align with the credential pathway programs we discussed a couple of slides ago. In innovation pilot updates, the micro school pilot continues to be a space for innovation as we test how we can engage students in authentic learning experiences that are project-based and community connected. Middle school principals will be joining the conversation as we consider how micro schools can be a method for engaging students in relevant and authentic approaches to teaching and learning. The micro school pilot is also influencing possibilities through the Core Plus aerospace class in the credential pathway programs. A class of 25 students may earn English, lab science, and third-year math credit through this project-based blocked course. And then the SEL and advisory pilot has launched, and the pilot team is now testing lessons within their classes. Work is in progress now, and we're moving ahead in several areas, such as considering options for expanding the micro school model. We've submitted, superintendent just spoke to the proposal to ISF to get the summer internship program running. And we have been looking at how to increase certification opportunities and assessing where we can expand to credential programs based on current data and workforce needs. Sorry, that was very fast.
Okay, thank you for that. Wanted to open up for questions and reflections from the board. Can you make sure I can see Sydney again? Since I can't see her. Thank you. Don't want to lose sight of her. Director Quay.
Just going to say, Director Neighbors fast is never a bad thing. So our board meetings are lengthy, so getting going through quickly is a good thing. Going to slide 8, I want to just, I love the direction that we're going with this. Again, I want to understand. I know this says the next high school in here. I guess if we look at Skyline, Issaquah, Liberty, but Skyline and Issaquah specifically, maybe just speak to your perspective in terms of how this looks with the current student population at those two schools and students being able to get the elective choices that they want. I don't know if you could shed some insight into that right now, because this is impressive, but I want to just, again, for the community stress that this looks different in our current structure. Could you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so this was edited slightly. So what I did was I went through in the foundational exploratory courses and took out things that are not already being offered in all buildings, or things that would be feasible to offer in all buildings. So by fall of 2025, the, I don't know, teal color at the top there will all be offered in all existing comprehensive high schools. With the deep dive courses, we have some adding to do in some of those areas. So like the arts, AV, technology, and communications, we can expand those a little bit so that they actually deep dive. Currently, they're very surface level. And that will be implemented over the next, I'd probably say 2 to 3 years, with a few other things being implemented at the same time. And then as far as the credential programs, they're at the bottom, the IT, networking, cybersecurity, and this was actually a question that was brought up to me earlier today. So a student at Skyline who is interested in doing aerospace manufacturing, the Core Plus certification, they would not have access to that program at their existing high school. Again, pending capacity, the student in question may be able to apply for in-district transfer, move down to Liberty for that last year or two of high school, if they chose to do that. The IT, networking, and cybersecurity is one of the top 2 careers that students have indicated at Skyline, and so that's why that's pegged there. I'm also hearing qualitative feedback from that building about more. We want more cybersecurity. We want more opportunity to explore these high-tech careers. And then, of course, the lack of having a shop in that building is a bit of a barrier to implementing a manufacturing course.
Thank you.
There's so much room on that campus. I don't know what's your holdup?
I'll put it in a portable.
Yeah. Oh, I think we put it above the commons. I think another place that people
Oh,
want.
yeah.
It's a great spot for it. Other comments? Director Meraldo.
Since we're talking about Skyline, so I would be interested how if somebody wanted to pursue the IT and networking or the cybersecurity credential, if they were also doing an IB diploma, would they be able to do both? Or is it because the classes are so restricted, like these classes are at these times, that's going to make that difficult?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we might be able to, in that building, open this pathway up to the IB Career Prep CP program as one of the options for the career preparation. My understanding of that program is not deep. It's very shallow, but I believe we could open it up in that field so students could pursue and also do an IB at the same time.
Director Mullings?
I love to see the continued work here, and I think it speaks deeply to what we need to be doing to open up opportunity and choice, and to get beyond that cursory understanding of some of the topics, or the cursory introduction that we can do today, and get further down the path of having our graduates be earning ready, or at least experienced, so that they have more sense of whether they're going to want to go down a path or not. So I love the continued work here. It is interesting, right, how this changes without having the ability to expand. And so hopefully we can bring that piece together as well. I think the thing that was interesting to me in some of the conversations of late, either around, maybe it's about some of the instructional program, is people asking questions about, well, what are we doing for the kids who have maybe aren't as connected to school, or aren't as engaged in school. And I think as you were going through it, I think that's what some of the micro schools project and some of the internships is about. And I just wonder, again, I'm feeling very sensitive to language lately, is if we're missing communicating that, because we've got it all under this sort of innovation and advanced language, which is good. And it's an innovation on how we reach our students. But I wonder if we aren't kind of missing communicating very clearly that all students are represented in this view, and we are doing innovative pieces to engage some of our students who maybe haven't been in the past. So is that the right, I guess, the way I'm thinking about the micro schools and the other one that was on the same slide, sorry, I just don't remember
Yeah.
that's what they're for.
Yeah. Yes, those are to help re-engage students who are not currently engaged in school. I would also add that my team has been trying to figure out the best way to hear from the students who are currently disengaged in school, to try and find out what kind of activities, programs, what would bring them back in, what would bring them in, even if it's not, honestly, even if it's not on our campuses. Is there something we can do with Renton Technical College? Can we put a cohort of students through one of their advanced manufacturing programs? Would that bring you back to school? We're having a hard time finding those students.
I appreciate the question, and I'll just share that one of the themes that has come up as we've been doing this work to incorporate feedback from multiple parts of our community, including students, has been the value of relevance, right? So having more exposure to workforce or work and employment type opportunities, having things that can translate immediately into a job, right? Whether you're going right to work or going to a 2 or 4 year program. But relevant. So I think when I'm hearing, there's two parts of this. What I'm hearing is from a point of feedback and sort of exploration, which is one, what are we doing to engage students who are currently not engaged in many of our, in any of our learning opportunities? And that's, we can hold that a separate, because that's not the full part of this conversation. But the second part is making sure that we are tying relevance of the learning opportunity to a student and their interests. So I think that's what I'm hearing, and that's how I'm interpreting some of the conversation.
Maybe. I guess what maybe goes through my mind is, how do we tell this story of what we're trying to do, which is really to provide opportunities for students where they are and to get them where they're trying to be in a way that tells the story that way. I think right now it's feeling quite kind of dense and doesn't necessarily scratch that itch. So in my mind, there's a bit of an umbrella imagery, like how are we fitting in all of the from starting points and the ending points into one image, and that everyone can see themselves represented here. I just don't think that piece is necessarily jumping out because of our language we're using, that this is this innovation project. So I just think I guess today's my day to say, how do we continue to challenge ourselves for simpler language that people can understand more quickly? Like, oh, well, this is for me too. It's not just for enter in other category.
Thank you for that. I think that's important lens that we should look at everything and every way we communicate to make sure that that's the messaging, because I know that's the intent. And so I think, but it's hard. And then we've heard that from our students, we've heard that from our teachers, that we need to make sure that we're promoting a really inclusive opportunity for all of our students. I want to go to my question is from the consent agenda, and it's from the CTE 4-year planning requirement document that was on the consent agenda. And so it's the bottom of page 1, academic integration, criteria 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so this may not belong in this, what is probably a very compliance-based reporting document. But what was missing from it for me is, what are all the cross credentialed courses for college credit?
Okay.
And I think that should be a continued work that we do every year
Mm-hmm.
to get more of our classes that kids are already taking eligible to earn college credit. And I think that needs to be a separate category. If you have to add it, something that isn't part of the OSPI one,
Mm-hmm.
but then that you send it to them and then add it for us, so be it.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important part that we're missing, because it's a yes and.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have done so beautifully to tell us is that CTE isn't just for people who are going to a trades route.
Mm-hmm.
Like, CTE is for everybody, and everybody includes our college-bound students. And so if they're taking the course and they could get college credit for it, then why aren't they? And so I would like to see a very intentional expansion
Mhm.
of all the existing courses
Okay.
that they could be getting college credit for.
So you would want to see a list of what we have offered and then what we are expanding in?
Yes.
Yeah.
To show this just the intention of like, we are gonna continue to focus on expanding that.
Mhm.
If it's like a tweak here or there of what's being taught, then so be it. Or if it's like, oh, that teacher needs to go get certified through the University of Washington or Bellevue College or whatever those barriers are that occur and exist. That way it just shows that intentionality of, again, trying to make things simpler because our students are just having to navigate an increasingly complex pathway to get to graduation. And so if they're going to have to navigate that complex pathway, at least they can get some credit along the way for it.
Absolutely.
It certainly would help guide us as parents as we do that registration every February. And you get to do that, flicks through those like 400 courses. We're like, I don't know which one that you should take. So
That's a very fair question.
other comments and questions for Director Neighbors? Yes, Director Quinn. And then Director Rother.
Okay. I was just going to go slide 7. I wanted to note this. Just I think the demand data is interesting. That's overlaid on this as well. When we look at different career opportunities, wage, opportunity, but the demand piece I think is interesting. I think it gets students thinking. I mean, I just reflected myself as a student. You only know what you know, and your parents, your parents' career or their chosen field. And that's generally, you don't know much beyond that. I think it's good for us to be able to provide these resources and also to provide the demand data. Because again, if you're in a certain field, you don't know necessarily that there's a demand in another field. So I think this is a great piece of this as well for students to be able to explore. And I'm assuming this goes beyond, I mean, this is showing obviously careers that, 4-year degree and beyond are required, but I'm assuming this is broad, right? This gives probably a broad range of career opportunities, right?
The original data itself, yes. And then I would add that the careers selected here relate both to the students' high school and beyond plan careers that they have saved and the entry-level careers that are a couple of slides later. A student could essentially enter one of those careers and then add education and build up
which
to
is
it.
great too. Yeah, I think that's a great addition to kind of the build a kind of the stair step idea too is great. So thank you.
I was just going to quickly add, especially since it ended up as number 2, looking at Liberty and the fact that there was a way to transition to doing aerospace engineering, I think is really interesting, and what that could do and how quickly that could happen. Getting that much closer to aerospace and aeronautics, it's even better. Those are the 2 A's in NASA.
Always practical. Geraldo, always practical. Okay. Any other comments or questions or commentary from our students? Yes.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I also wanted to comment on the fact that you were talking about navigating the graduation pathway and things like that. And I know that we also tend to definitely focus in on like equity and making sure things are accessible throughout our districts. And I also wanted to say, like, if you're the first student or person in your family going through like the high school system in the United States, that's like even increasingly more confusing because not only are you now trying to navigate different graduation pathways, you're also like as a freshman coming in learning about like how even just like an AP class works and what is an honors class and like how does college credit work. And I think that's not just for immigrant families because the way the high school landscape has changed in the past like 25 or 30 years is also definitely drastic. But yeah, I think having resources that can help navigate that while also maintaining opportunities for college credit is a super great thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. Thank you for this. We always appreciate the opportunity to talk about this really important section of our high school experience that we want to continue to expand on, develop, and get to completed pathways that really set our students up for success no matter where they choose to go.
Thanks.
So, thank you. Next item on our agenda is monitoring report operational expectation 14 instructional program.
I move the board accept the monitoring report, operational expectation 14, instructional program, OE 14, as presented.
Second.
Superintendent.
Great. I am not flying solo. I'm welcoming up I'm welcoming up Dana Bailey and Rich Mellish to the podium. We have a brief overview presentation here to highlight a couple of key things from this very robust catch-all learning environment instructional program type operational expectation. So these slides have been posted, so they're readable by anyone, and I know the board reads everything in advance. So we'll just pull out some of the key highlights here and set up for the conversation for the board to engage in questions and dialogue about this. So
we invite the students to present first.
Perfect. We are ready.
Hi, my name's Dashita Jain, and I'm the student representative from Skyline High School. And I'm presenting my report on operational expectation 14 at Skyline High School. I conducted a survey sent out on Monday, November 4th, which closed on Thursday, November 7th, with the purpose of examining the implementation of EL 14 in Skyline High School. The survey was sent out to all Skyline High School students via Canvas. And through this, I received 183 responses, which is a little bit under 10% of the Skyline population. And compared to last year, I had gotten 262 responses. So this does show a noticeable decline in student engagement. For my first few questions, I kind of stuck to the same questions I'd asked the previous year, asking about the implementation of course content throughout different courses and classes at school. I also asked if students felt that there were enough opportunities to explore personal talents and interests. And I asked if there was enough opportunities to prepare for academic standards such as AP and IB exams. And these were all had pretty similar results to the previous years, in which most students agreed and just showed consistency between historic data. Something new this year that I asked students about was the potential implementation of AP into the Skyline curriculum. I first started off by asking if students think that the current IB curriculum offers sufficient academic rigor and opportunities to earn college credit. Interestingly enough, most students said that the current IB curriculum does have ample rigor and college credit opportunities, but I misspoke. A lot of students mentioned that it provides ample rigor and college credit opportunities, but 50% said that they would like more college credit opportunities. So this reflects that the IB curriculum offers sufficient rigor, but students desire more college credit opportunities. And this could be addressed by exploring additional AP classes or dual enrollment courses. And I also asked if students would be interested in exploring AP classes if they were available at Skyline. And over 75% of students mentioned that they would be very interested or somewhat interested, which does indicate a strong desire for more academic flexibility. Because as I had asked in the open response section of my survey, a lot of students mentioned that AP they think is more flexible than IB, and this was mentioned especially because of IB's blocking system for our humanities courses, in which we have our English and social studies classes blocked together. You have to take both if you want to take one as IB, and students said that that felt somewhat restrictive for them. And I also asked students if they feel like they have enough support for different learning styles and academic needs. And interestingly, this question received less of a positive response, and most students were neutral here. And we had 27% of students expressing dissatisfaction, and they expressed a need for improvement in supporting diverse learning styles. And I also asked if technology was successfully supporting students' learning experience at school. And the most popular response was that the technology was pretty effective. So that's a good note for the district. Looking more closely into the open response portion of this, I asked, what are your thoughts on the addition of AP courses at Skyline High School? And what impact do you think this would have on students? And some of the key themes that I noticed here was that students believe that by having the AP curriculum, it would expand academic options for students. And one student specifically said that they feel that the IB is limiting when it comes to the course types offered, and that the AP curriculum would give students more subjects to explore. This again is reflecting the frustration of students with the limited nature of flexibility that the IB program currently offers. One solution would be to modify the IB curriculum as it is right now to enable students to get the college credit that they're desiring, and also enhance the flexibility. Another thing, again, was the college credit recognition, which was a major concern for students. And they voiced that many colleges in the US don't give as many credits for IB as they do for AP. And this is another reason why so many of the Skyline students currently, even if they are taking IB courses, opt to take the AP test in that same course, just seeking that college credit, not because they feel like they are lacking the rigor in the subject, but because they want that credit. And so they see that AP is an easier path to earning that college credit. One concern expressed, though, was that if you were to implement the AP curriculum, this would increase the stress and potential burnout on students. And they said that IB is already so demanding, adding AP would make it harder to balance everything. And I think that this is especially an important point, and we would have to be very careful of how we would be implementing both programs. And students also wanted to know exactly how we would potentially integrate both systems together. And they said if both are offered, there needs to be better clarity on how they would work together. So how would we make sure that one isn't being compromised in preference to the other? I also just gave students one more space to mention any additional suggestions or comments they had on how the district can better support the students' academic growth. And once again, we heard, I saw a desire for advanced AP classes. Students also mentioned to have more flexible, to have more flexible teacher responses to learning styles of students. And they said that maybe more hands-on curriculum would be advantageous. And another interesting theme was a desire for increased mental health support, in which that students mentioned that even though we have counselors, they tend to be experiencing an overwhelming they tend to be experiencing too much demand, and that their needs aren't always being met. So the limited capacity is something that needs to be addressed. And overall, the survey reflects a generally positive perception of the instructional program. And there are questions surrounding how AP would be implemented, but the main desire for students here is college credit, not necessarily advancement for rigor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. This is Rich Mellish, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning Services, here with Dr. Bailey. So just wanted to share, there's a lot of ground covered in OE 14. And so just wanted to highlight a few programs before we get started. Wanted to start with, let's see, is that working? Not yet. Okay. I just want to give a quick update as we are jumping into Not working yet. Okay, whoops. The social studies, the renewal of our social studies curriculum. We have several committees going right now that are going through this kind of expanded program, taking some core anchor materials that have been adopted or are in process of being adopted, and really diving deep to develop the ISD version of the course to make sure it has deep representation and strong connection to the modern world and current events. I'm super excited about the quality of work our teachers are doing to create highly engaging social studies courses of the future for our district. Gave one slide, just a quick update of where each team is at right now or when they're going to be launching their work. The other program I wanted to highlight is some unheralded work around our multilingual learner program. We actually have some of the top scores in the state in terms of student progress. In fact, we were #2 in the state of Washington. And if we reach #1, I have to wear head to toe cougar gear for a day. So a great personal sacrifice. No, I look forward to it. But we brought in some really nice, wonderful people, and they have been doing some amazing work with our ML students. And so we have some scores we're really proud of in terms of their achievement. We also recognize that it isn't even across all demographic groups, that even though we score very high compared to the state averages, our Spanish speaking population are facing more barriers to language acquisition with a variety of barriers. So we are steering more attention, more focus, more intensive consideration around our Spanish speaking populations, especially where there's clusters of those in our district. In the monitoring of OE 15, there were some questions about where does technology for accessibility and variability fit in our monitoring, and lo and behold, it is in 14.4, where we start laying out a little bit more of where we continuously are growing in our practices, our tools, our resources, and our habits of integrating technology to make sure that learning is more accessible to students, and that students can express their learning or engage in their learning across diverse learning styles and diverse learning needs. So wanted to highlight those 3 sections, but of course, this report covers a lot of ground. And so Dr. Bailey and I are here to assist in your discussion of the instructional program.
I wanted to open it up to any public input first. Is there any public input in the room or on Zoom on this topic? Seeing none, we will move on. Open up for board reflections, clarifying questions. While you're thinking, thank you for doing this short, brief presentation, having it attached ahead of time. I think it's super helpful for me to focus. And I appreciated that you highlighted some of the great things multilingual learners are doing, and also to highlight, hey, here are our gaps. I think that both is really helpful and transparent, and I appreciate that. Yeah, Director Coyne.
Yes, thank you again for the presentation this evening. Question on 14.6 on page 12. A note that I often hear from constituents is elective offerings at all of our schools and where we may have gaps. And I know on this particular, it says instructional programs, including both content and practice, are uniformly implemented. And I don't know if necessarily that's the intent with 14.6. I know when I read it, I pulled that out, kind of the elective piece of that. But is there any way, I guess is my interpretation of 14.6, is it addressing that elective offerings in all of our schools? Or would I be finding that somewhere else?
So electives happen in a couple different ways. Like our CTE program has lots of electives that students can offer, and those tend to be more driven by central work. And so they tend to spread out more uniformly, not 100% uniformly, but they do tend to spread out more uniformly. We also have a process where a teacher could get very passionate about a topic and submit approval for their course to be offered as an elective. And so we do get some really creative, engaging electives. Of course, students have to sign up for it for us to offer it, but that does create some places where an elective happens in one school, and sometimes that spreads to other schools. Sometimes it becomes kind of a niche little elective program. We do evaluate to make sure that we have sufficient electives in each of the content areas across the schools. And so far that we've been able to maintain that fairly evenly, even if they're not all the same across the district. So.
And that's helpful. And I'm assuming at the middle school level, because I hear it actually, I get why there could be more difference, obviously at the high school level, but at the middle school level, that question comes up too. But I'm assuming at the middle school level, it's obviously probably more uniform, right?
In some cases, yes. And in some cases, in the smaller middle schools, the schedule might have, say, an art class one year and a different art class the other year. And the students have an opportunity to get to both, but not in the same year.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Maraldo.
Interesting, because that was going to be my same exact point. In the past, we have seen, because middle school is squishier, the reasons for those electives are different, and there's fewer options. In the past, we've seen what those selections were, at least in a broader sense. And that's when we identified that we had a real incongruous selection of technology, depending on what middle school you went to. So because there's fewer options, I still appreciate having that data. And I don't know if I'm alone in that, but to really understand, I know all the reasons. Still, so often the reason comes down to the adults in the room. I teach 5 out of 6 courses, and I'm doing some type of block. So I have one extra course that doesn't fit in what I normally teach. So what am I going to teach extra? And then it ends up being up to the teacher, and the students are like, oh, here's my selection. I guess I'll pick that one. So I don't know how much of it is truly student driven. And I hear all the time, oh, if you're in full-time band or if you're in full-time, whatever. But I'm just curious as to that. And I realize that for some things, like if you're at Pine Lake, you're going to get wood shop because they have a shop and the other schools may not. But really kind of understanding what those differences are and not having links to that. I don't have a middle schooler, so I'm not really connected to that anymore. But that for me as a decision maker was really important for us to say, we need to make some decisions around what are done, and not having that information is, I don't know. I'm sad to see it go, but I don't know about my board colleagues, especially those who haven't been here that long.
I think it's sad you're in a tough spot because we've asked you to condense your reporting and you provide everything. So good luck with that.
We are aware that you'd like it shorter and narrower and more focused, and also all the data. Speaking to my heart. So I would say a few things about that notion of middle school electives. The middle school principals often, but maybe not every single year, run student interest surveys that would say, if we had something that isn't tiered now, what would it be? And we also agree that students having choice across the electives is really important. Make sure there's not a void somewhere. And you are completely right. In a 6-period day, if you are in a year-long elective, that's all you get. So if you're in music class, that's what you're going to get. If you're in Spanish 1, that's what you're going to get.
Dr. Taylor.
I realize you two can't see me over there the way that room is configured tonight, but so just respond to the voice in the corner, if you will. Just 2 questions, one for each of you, actually. Dr. Bailey, the transition to kindergarten program, I know I had an opportunity to tour one of those programs with you at Clark Elementary, but when you see the data, it just jumps off the page as to how wildly successful this program appears to be. So 2 questions, just if you could remind me what the demand has been for that program to begin with. And then I'd also just be curious what you would say would be the major obstacles to expanding that program if we wanted to.
Sure. Thanks for the question. We are very proud of the excellent work that's being done in the transition to kindergarten program. And from a demand standpoint, 2 new classes opened this year, one at Briarwood, one at Apollo, both filled very nicely. So we believe the demand is there, and the law is a little bit in flux about who can go in, who would be in that course. And also the funding is got a big question mark over it now. So I would say giant hurdle is consistent funding from the legislature to make sure that if we could offer 7 classes and filled 7 classes, but the legislator's only going to fund 2, that's a big hurdle. And another hurdle would be a kindergarten-like space in a school. So there's a capacity in the school to open another class with pre-existing kindergarten furniture, because it is some money to open up with all the materials, the toys and materials and books and texts and tier 1 materials, but the furniture would also be a lot. So legislation and capacity in the school building.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. And then Mr. Mellish? You still over there?
I'm still there.
Okay. This is a very general question, but again, the numbers around the multilingual learners is really phenomenal. I mean, kudos. They're fantastic. My question is just generally, how do you explain why our program has been so successful in comparison to others across the state? Is there one thing you can point to in particular?
Oh, boy. Those are always,
Or
it's hard to point to one thing, but I would say that I'd appreciate that we several years ago went to a highly qualified cert program. So we've hired really highly qualified certificated teachers to be with the classroom, and our classroom teachers are our close partners in serving these students. And then I always like to give credit to our community. We have a community here where across all of the diversity in our district are highly committed to their child's education. And so I think the partnership between school and family among our ML families is very positive. And I'll also give a shout out to our family partnership program, who helps make sure that partnership stays very robust.
Great. Thank you.
My question is on page 10. I like the example that you give anecdotally about the results of this different process for Algebra 1, but I don't have any context. No, it's the inset part, starting with results. Yep. So, like, what was it before or without that system? Like, how were students doing? Do you know what I'm getting at? Like, I don't actually know. Was this actually change?
Sure. Yeah, I can give you a little bit more context. I'd like to talk about algebra all day. So there are many ways to take algebra in our system, and there have been, and there are many different varieties of what that support could look like. So specifically in this data, we looked at what was the successful earning of the Algebra 1 credit when you were a known to be lagging math skills person. If you took the intensified algebra course, which is 2 periods, not necessarily back to back, but 2 periods in your 9th grade year, what was the successful accrual of Algebra 1 credit if you took the algebra class plus the algebra lab and algebra class plus a study hall or study skills? And so we're looking at how successful those sort of double dipping or 2 investments. And the previous year, so the pre-algebra to algebra or the without the intensified algebra, about 50% of the students who took pre-algebra as an intervention earned an algebra credit the following year. And about 50% of the students who took pre-algebra passed that course. So the results here, the intensified algebra showed a significantly higher earning of algebra credit, and the algebra plus algebra lab intervention class was very strong as well. They had a really strong result. If you had known lagging math skills and took algebra plus algebra lab taught by a math teacher, they were both very successful interventions.
Thank you. And it shows the value of having 7 periods to support students. So we worked really hard for that. And so thank you for taking advantage of that. Sydney.
Hi. Couple questions. One, we'll go back to Director Taylor on the conversation on transitional kindergarten. I heard part of the question and part of the answer. And so I think part of the question was around the demand for transitional K versus how many we were actually able to get into a classroom. I don't know if I heard that exact answer. Or maybe that wasn't the question, but that's the question I'd like to know.
Sure. So transition kindergarten is growing, and this year we went to 5 classes with 15 students in each one. So last year there were 3 classes with 15 students in each one, and all 5 classes are full.
And so are there, I guess, what's the unmet demand, maybe is my question. So is there a certain number of students that couldn't?
I appreciate that question. So in all of our preschool programs, we have places for students to go. I know that the ECAP program is full. They try to have it full from the beginning. I think there are students on the wait list at least
Okay.
one of those schools. And remember, this was part of the knowing that the South End has very few early learning, high quality opportunities for our youngest learners. Renton also opened up a transition kindergarten class in every one of their elementary schools. So all of the North Renton schools also have a TK class this year. So we are watching and learning to see what might the demand be going forward. But for this year, I think we successfully filled 2 new classes.
Okay, great.
With a big question mark of the funding from the legislation over that idea.
Yes, I very much, that's part of what I was trying to understand. Like, is there a wait list of double what we already have with the potential concerns around funding or not? And then my second question is on the assistive technology. So I appreciate the addition and seeing it called out here of where we have assistive technology. What I'd love to get a sense of is adoption or usage of these.
I'll answer my question first, if you don't mind. There is not a double wait list for TK. I think we are at the right place for this school year for the number of students in the demand. I don't know that we could have filled one more class. But it's, as you can see in the data, it's a strong program with strong results for kids.
In terms of usage, we tried to look to see if we had a way of usage, and so where we did was with the Learning Ally as a place where the system creates usage data. But with the Microsoft tools, we don't see a way of finding out how many students are using the text to voice options, the immersive reader options, and collecting that usage. What we have is anecdotally in our training, we're seeing significantly increased interest among teachers, and beginning to see more usage of it across classrooms. We're actually, with the new literacy program this year, seeing more interest at the elementary level with the new type of text that our program has of using more immersive reading tools. So I don't have hard data on the actual usage. I wish I did have more of that.
Other questions? Dr. Maraldo?
I had a couple. One was an acknowledgement and one was a question. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there was a very robust description throughout towards the end. I mean, the last third, I would say, talks about material selection and opportunities for parental input and review in that selection, and also parental review of current materials. And we don't often talk about that. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to let the public know that, showcased in this report is all the ways that they can be involved. Because I think there's this mythos out there that there's no parent involvement and parents don't know what's going on. So there is an opportunity. And if you look through, thank you for clarifying just all the ways that parents can be involved. My question is around page 11. So you talk about some of the elementary interventions, which the board has talked about quite a bit during our SIP discussions, and we're having one coming up on next Tuesday. The report talks about the actions based on the results, which I really appreciate. So are these new actions? And so will we be getting some of the data on the results? So like, what was the information that led you to this, intervention? Oh, it's page 11, I think, Stephen, if you were looking. What led you to that? And then what are some of the, what's been the result of those actions? So is that something that you're thinking next year we can provide you that data, or are we just going to hear about what the actions are? Because I think for me, I'd love to know what the results are of the activities you're taking. Did that make sense?
Yes. And so yes, on some of the interventions, we already have a year or two's worth of data. And I believe we'll get to see some of that when we get to our results two monitoring. That's the place where we've tended to put a lot more of the achievement data, and I'll take note to make sure that we call out some of those interventions. And we definitely have the data because a lot of these are state funded interventions. And so we have to do impact reporting annually to the state. So it's not hard for us to pull that data out.
Did that answer your question? Any other question? Yes, Naomi.
Hi, this is slightly unrelated to what we've been talking about so far, but I believe it is related to OE 14. But when I was first applying to be a student representative, one of my interests was the health curriculum in our schools. Does health fall into OE 14, or is that like a state thing?
That's an excellent question. We do cover health, like it is part of the results two monitoring. Well, like there is a section where we can cover health. We didn't call it out in this particular report. We have adopted new health curriculum in middle school recently, and high school. And we are currently looking at the elementary health curriculum with our PE teachers who also help us with health as well.
Okay, that helps. Because I was concerned about like outdated curriculum because I took summer health 2 years ago in high school, and there was some information in the instruction that was outdated and incorrect. And my sister is in 7th grade currently, and she recently shared with me that her class is watching the same video that I was watching 5 years ago. So, and that video back then was also quite old. So just wanted to check in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I also have a question. So earlier you guys were mentioning a 7-period day in the high schools is really beneficial for students because they're able to take more electives and even like supportive math lab classes. And I wanted to inquire if in our middle schools as well, because currently we have a 6-period day, and I remember being at Pine Lake Middle School and only being able to pick between having like a music class, for example, or going into wood shop. And I thought both are very appealing options. So I just wanted to know if that's something that's encompassed by OE 14 and if it's something that we might be considering.
I would say we're not considering it at this time. We use local levy dollars to fund the 7-period day. And that took a lot of dialogue with the community to do, and we are grateful for their support. If you're friends with anyone from Eastlake High School, you'll know that Eastlake and Lake Washington School District is getting rid of their 7th period effective next year. So all districts deal with budget crisis differently. So at this time, I don't think that we have the capacity at this point to consider a 7-period day at our middle schools. But we dream about it, and we certainly have lots of dreams about middle school, especially Director Mullins. So
Director Gallagher, the topic of the schedule and the periods in the day would actually fall under OE 10, which is the structure of schools, to answer that part of your question.
yes, it would require a lot more tax money to do that we don't have. So any other questions, reflections, anything else from your side? No. Okay. We have a motion on the floor, so I think we have our students first, if I'm not mistaken.
You seeing? I'm not seeing the tote board if you are.
Yep, we can see them. It's 7-0.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And now board. There's a student at home who's been participating at home.
you.
You're doing the math. Yes, I know. I saw. So yes. So now we motion on the floor for the board. for monitoring report operational expectation 14. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There you go. Thank you. It is confusing, Naomi, that we have, there is kind of a Venn diagram overlap for how curriculum overlaps with what we want students to learn. And most of what we want students to learn from a health standpoint is in results 2, or what we used to call ends 2. So it is kind of confusing. So we get confused too. The next item on our agenda is monitoring report operational expectation 11, discipline.
I move the board accept the monitoring report operational expectation 11 discipline, OE 11, as presented.
Second.
Great. We'll have our student representative Aditi Mara Holly online doing her presentation. Thank you, Aditi, for joining. I know that you're a little under the weather, so thank you.
I'm so sorry I couldn't be here today, but thank you for the opportunity to present my report. So I did a report on OE 11, which is discipline in our schools, and I collected data through a survey on Microsoft Forms, which was sent out to all Liberty students through Canvas. And the survey window was 1 week from November 1st to November 8th. I received 130 responses from about 1,500 students, which is less than normal, but we can start to rethink the methods that we collect data from our students. In terms of the questions I asked students if they'd received or accessed a copy of the Student Discipline Handbook. And overwhelmingly, students responded no to this question or unsure. Just 17% of them reported that they had accessed a copy. And so I think that we could definitely focus on communication regarding discipline policies, and kind of just educating students that they exist and that they can find them if they need to know where they are. And I think this would definitely be a useful topic, especially in our SEL classes. I also asked about how discipline policies are communicated to students. And students generally had mixed opinions for this question, where some of them thought that, the discipline policies were communicated well. We had 7% say that they were communicated extremely well, 39% say that they were communicated somewhat well. And then we had a proportion of students that were neutral or thought that communication was poor in terms of discipline policies. I think that teachers and staff generally do take care of disciplinary actions and outline clear expectations in their classrooms. And so that does, or I would guess that would be a reason that we had that positive response to this question. In terms of staff interactions with students when it comes to discipline, this question received very little negative response, which is a good sign that students find the response from staff to be generally professional and fair. I also asked about how effectively the school addresses student behaviors that disrupt learning. And this question did receive mixed responses, where 50% of students selected somewhat effectively, 28% selected ineffectively, and I do think that this is an area of improvement. And many students that did respond negatively or neutrally to this question elaborated in the open-ended question, which I asked at the end. Another area of concern, point of concern for me, is regarding question 7 that I asked, which was, do you feel that current discipline practices contribute to creating a safe learning environment? And while we did have a majority of students respond that they felt safe at school due to discipline policies, 32% responded that they sometimes felt safe at school and 13% responded that they didn't. And so this is certainly an area of improvement for our district. Another positive in my report was finding that 83% of respondents reported that they were aware of prohibited behaviors like using alcohol and violence, etc. And then I guess the last multiple choice question I asked students was how easy it was to access discipline policies on the district website or at school. And I received a similar response that I received to the first question, which is that most students didn't know where to find them, or thought that it was difficult for them to find them. So I think communication and making it easier for students to know where to locate them, or even know that they exist, would be extremely helpful. And then the last question I asked was an open-ended question, asking if students had any additional feedback or suggestions on how discipline policies can be improved at Liberty. So regarding the strictness of discipline, this was very, very mixed. Some students believed that there should be more discipline, that it should be harsher. Others believed that there was already too much discipline with the new phone policy. So very mixed in this regard. Some students, I have 5 in this survey, reported the use of vapes, alcohol and drugs in the school bathrooms, which again is a point of concern for me. And then I guess the last big point that I want to mention, which I have been kind of alluding to throughout this report, is that communication is key, especially regarding discipline policies. And so one student actually asked for shorter and easier to understand versions of the discipline policies, as well as a reminder midway through the year. So currently we go over discipline policies early in the year in our SEL class, but there is no kind of reminder, say at the start of second semester. So implementing that would be helpful. And that was my report. So I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Did you have a report? We have one more report.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ava. I did the same OE as Aditi, but at Issaquah. So I pushed out a survey via Microsoft Forms, and that was pushed out on Canvas. It received responses from November 6th to the 7th, and it received 180 responses. This is about 8% of the Issaquah High School population, which definitely reflects the trend that Deshita was talking about regarding a decrease in student engagement with these surveys. There were 3 main categories of questions that I asked in regards to the implementation of OE 11. The first category was about, like Aditi was saying, the communication between districts and students and our awareness of policies. The second category was the implementation of OE 11 in terms of the way students felt they were being treated in that process. And the last was the learning environment in the classrooms. And 2 of these 3 got largely positive responses. So when we look at communication between students and the district in terms of OE 11, we again see the trend of there being a disconnect reflected at Issaquah High School. 87% of Issaquah High School students reported being unsure if they got a student handbook or flat out saying that they did not receive one. And 55% of students said that they did not know where to find district policies and district disciplinary policies online. Personally, I would think that this is generally a reflection of the fact that students are not really prioritizing things like handbook talks and homeroom lessons as a whole. So I think it's important to kind of evaluate that, see how we can increase engagement, and also connect with students outside of those spaces. Secondly, when it came to students feeling like they were being treated in a reasonable and respectful manner and having policies applied equally, there was generally a positive response with all 5 questions regarding this topic, either having a positive or neutral response. However, there was some variability in the open-ended question, which I'll get to in a second. And then lastly, in terms of preserving the learning environment, students generally felt 44% positive that our disciplinary policies did that for them, and 40% reported feeling neutrally about that subject. Students did take the opportunity to expand on this a little bit more in their open responses. When it comes to the way they felt they were being treated in the implementation of disciplinary policies, a large amount of students felt as though they were not being implemented the same across all different categories of students. And there was a good amount that said that they felt as though certain students who were more involved in the school were, for lack of a better word, somewhat being protected when it came to punitive consequences. And there were also a large amount of students who felt that overall policy in terms of classroom management was not super harsh, but like DT said, there was also a large amount of students who felt like the phone policy and things like that were too harsh. So overall, some variation there. But yeah, I would go ahead and echo the consensus that the main thing we need to focus on is communication with our students. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll want the report first, Stephen. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share the work that the district leaders are doing across the system to support the positive behaviors and create the conditions where students are able to access their learning, learn how their behavior impacts others, and see themselves as a vital member of their school community. This report includes data on exclusion, both in school and out of school, reasons why students were excluded. A celebration for our district is that less than 1% of our students experienced an exclusion last year. This shows that the system and the steps to be more proactive and the coaching stance more of the time is working for many of our students. This data is also abundantly clear for whom the system is not working. We know the intersectionality of lagging school achievement, struggling to attend school regularly, not feeling engaged, or having a strong connection to an adult are critical levers that we can and should be examining as part of helping everyone find success in school. The disproportionate exclusionary discipline for students served in special services, students self-reporting to be low income, and students qualified as multilingual learner is apparent and is becoming more so. The disproportionate exclusionary discipline for students in our BIPOC focus group is no less disproportionate than it was last year. We are not yet closing this gap. This is urgent work, and if the all students in our vision means each and every one, this work includes each and every one of us. The relentless focus on dismantling whatever is in our way and asking ourselves, what's next? What are we missing? How can we interrupt this predictable pattern? What adult behaviors will support students that we haven't yet tried? And to be unapologetically unyielding, working towards equitable outcomes for students as it relates to discipline, achievement, and opportunity. I really do appreciate the input from the students because it shows us clearly when the efforts have an observable impact on the students' increased understanding and where we still have work to do. Specifically today, I'm thinking about all the ways the handbook is made available to students and their caregivers and what we might do to up that score by next year. I'm just going to be real. All your parents signed on your behalf. And so you went to your parents and it didn't go to you. I am really pleased to hear that the students report they're aware of the expectations. So the handbook talks in the SEL classes are successful. The elementary schools have plans to reteach expected behavior following breaks, and it appears that some of the high school students might find this helpful as well. Anchored in the PBIS tenets of the positive and proactive stated expectations, we have many examples of things happening in our schools, positively stated what to do rather than what not to do, making it right documents or pause and think processes help students think about how their behavior impacts others and their own learning. I'm here to answer your questions, and I have some samples of the PBIS work to share.
Yeah, if you'd show some of the samples and go through those with us, since I know that part didn't get to happen in
Sure.
the work study.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
That would be great. And then
Okay.
we'll open up to public input.
So this is a sample of positively stated expected behaviors from across the district. It is not in any particular order. It is not ranked in any way. It's just a great sampling. That first one is the new Liberty High School sign, cell phones off, learning on. The Cedar Trails in the middle, we are the wolf pack, and the pack stands for we are problem solvers, we are accountable, we are courageous, and we are kind. And it shows up also in this one on the left about how to behave in stairwells. And it gives examples of problem solvers, accountable, courageous, and kind. And in the kind box, it says stay to the right and use a 0 level voice. And here we see some examples from IVE. This wheel on the right is a playground sign where if you were having a small conflict, I think they call it a small problem, you can walk over to this playground conflict resolution wheel and decide how you might solve that problem. The other two are a self-report about how you're feeling, and it specifically calls out, I need help. I need help, I might need help, or I don't need help. So if you are yellow, you're high energy, you might need help. Here's an example of how IVE does the reteaching of expected behaviors. And this is a class activity where they would march along all the steps of the board to their teacher's satisfaction. That's in the red. Your teacher decides they can repeat an activity as many times as necessary. And once your group completes the activity to your teacher's satisfaction, you get to spin the prize wheel. Over there, we have some more examples. The bottom one is called Need a Break. It just tells kids how to acceptably ask for a break. The top one is lemon squeezies. It's how to self-regulating tips you can use to make yourself feel calmer in class. These are 2 examples or 3 examples. This snowman is another example of an after break, how you reteach the expectations. The middle one is a classroom think sheet where you might say, I chose to, insert the off-task behavior, next time I should, insert the expected behavior, comment, signature. And the one on the far left is uses emojis to say, I'm in the calming corner because I'm feeling a certain way, the technique I tried to do to calm myself down, and what is next. These are from Issaquah Middle School. They have stated poster signs everywhere in their school. I've shared with you today the bathroom expectations and the halftime expectations. That would be for after school games. The IMS way says we're safe, respectful, and kind. Sunny Hills has, this is their longer version. They do have a shorter version, but it really tells you what the expected behaviors are everywhere you are. If you were to say, what is the playground? The be engaged part says follow the rules of the game, listen to adults, and use equipment safely. So this would be their longer version of their expected behavior. On the left is a sample of a low cost or free acknowledgements or rewards for the secondary schools that match to the desired behavior. So if you wanted to have privilege, you could have all of these choices, and that just helps the adults who are working with the students just zoom in on the right reward that might incentivize the student to reach for that desired behavior. I just really enjoy that Sunny Hills motto. I'm going to be the best me I can be. There are the sheet on the left is all 3 of the across all 16 elementary schools PBIS tools that we're using this year, the check-in, check-out, breaks are better, and the class pass, which is how you acceptably ask for a break and take them and then get right back on to work. Although this one isn't a great picture, I do really appreciate it because it gives a visual and language to how you are doing as a student and when you need help. So the top one is, I can't stand this and I'm ready to explode. I want to hit or kick something. I need help. I'm out of control. Versus the blue one, I'm doing okay. I'm not happy. I can stay where I am. I can keep working. I can control myself, but I'm annoyed. And I think that's our last page. Oh no, there's one more. So this is a reflection sheet about if you perhaps had strayed outside of the expected behavior, how that behavior impact others, how the other person might have felt, what you're going to do next time, and then gives a chance for the student to think about ways to remedy or make it right. This comes from Issaquah High School. This is a hope lesson or a hope scale where students can work through and think about what it takes to be hopeful and how to plan for the future you want to achieve for yourself. This is the dining den rules, restaurant behavior, level 2 voices, respect all adults. When the microphone says ladies and gentlemen, that means all your voices are off. And how you take care of the space together. I think this is Grand Ridge. Yeah, so those are some examples of many, many, many that you will see across our system on the positively stated behavior expectations.
Thank you for going through that. Wanted to open it up now for public comment and input. Anyone in the room or on Zoom for operational expectation 11? Seeing none. Want to open it up for board clarifying questions, comments, reflections.
I just have a question that I'm curious about. I think the answer to my question is no, but I want to ask it anyway. So in reading the report, I see, and it's great, that exclusionary discipline is down across the district. That's great. My question is, though, there is a universe of disruptive behavior in our schools. This shows that some portion of that behavior ends up in exclusionary discipline. Do we have any data about other disruptive behavior and whether that is up or down in the schools, or is that just too onerous to collect on a daily basis? Does that make sense?
Yep, I understand your question. We don't collect that data. We think about that, work on that, and work on strengthening all the in school, in class, in hallway, in lunchroom, coaching and support behaviors that go all the way along so that you can see at the end of a year, a less than 1% of students receiving an exclusionary discipline.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Moraldo?
So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that the data regarding why we're suspending, why we're excluding students, and the amount of exclusions is really remarkable compared to other districts, even in the state. So I think getting down to less than 1% is still remarkable. I don't know what it's like in other districts to be able to compare us, or to compare us to like a statewide data might be interesting to know, just because I want our parents to feel like their kids, that the kids that need discipline are being dealt with, because I know there's been changes to the law. And I think there's this idea that it's the wild, wild west out there and now kids are getting away with everything. So I think being able to still compare us at some point with either a statewide data might be able to help us kind of solidify to our community just how low our numbers are. And I like the way that the description of why, the reasons, being able to go through that much easier than the spreadsheet we were getting before that was too long to fit on a screen. I did want to ask about if you could describe the difference between a fight without a major injury and violence without a major injury.
I don't do this every day. So I think the break between those two categories is people versus stuff.
Okay.
That's what I think, but I will double check and get back to you.
Swinging my backpack versus swinging my fist.
Or toppling furniture, or I will find out for you.
Okay.
There's going to be a nuance between those two.
But I do want to say, because we've gotten some reporting out on the news about violence in our schools, and looking at the suspensions, there has been significant drops between just last year and this. So I wanted to go through them. As far as violence without major injury went from 31, and that's in all high schools. So all middle schools. So if you look at all 6 middle schools, 31 instances in 2022 versus 17 in 2023. And by the way, it was 96 in 2021. So kids were really wily when we got back from COVID. And then for the fighting without major injury, it went from 33 to 16. And again, that's all middle schools, and there's 6 middle schools. Also looking at a threat to another went from 19 to 4. So I really do want to highlight that we're not talking about fights in the school every day. And I think that that's one of the things that is kind of the mythos out there, is that, and to see that level of drop, 50% pretty much, a 50% drop in our rates is whatever we're working on, and being able to see how you're communicating to students what they need to be doing in our schools, that the schools are doing a great job with that type of communication, and we're seeing it here.
Yeah, Director Coyne.
Yeah, just a quick question. Dr. Bailey, thank you. This was fun to go over these slides to see the different supports in all of our schools. I guess a question, and as I was looking at the report too, do we have any data that shows, I guess, staff interpretation on this? Do they feel like these practices are working? Do we have any what is that type of feedback?
Of the proactive, preventative ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, the elementary schools had a big head start on working through PBIS techniques and tools. The middle schools and high schools are coming along looking for the common language. Like if I say the same direction that you hear in the lunchroom and on the bus, it's the same way, the likelihood of that direction being followed just goes right up. And so it is as variable as teachers can be, but the classrooms and the schools where you walk in, where there are common expectations and everybody knows at Maywood Middle School what the Maywood way is, what the volume levels are, you don't have to wait more than about 2 seconds to redirect the students, and then that volume level goes right where it's supposed to be because everybody knows what is expected.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned that because I saw that firsthand at Pine Lake Middle School. It was always right on. They had that common language and you could see it in play. So thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment. You know, we as a board talk a lot about disproportionality and equity, and those are really important values to our board and our district. I think that when you're talking now of a number of suspensions that are 54 out of a total middle school population of, you know, approaching 5,000 students. So when you're already talking about less than 1% of the student population, I don't think it's going to be humanly possible to address disproportionality when you're talking about such a small n size. I don't think it'll be statistically possible. So I would just say to my board colleagues, yes, that doesn't mean that we don't uphold the value of disproportionality, but the reality is, if you're talking about a sample size that's that small, I think that we can't expect it to be. So I totally appreciate you guys walked up and started the conversation on, hey, here's what we're doing great, and we want to go to this next. And I think that's still great, and I love that. But I do want to just highlight that when you're already talking about 1%, trying to move the needle on tenths of percents is really asking a lot. So,
and if we mean each and every, we're going after them all.
And we appreciate that. I think we just also have to know like what is us for us as policymakers to realistically expect.
Sure.
So, Director Mullings.
Okay, there we go. So a few comments. I think what comes up for me, and I commented on in the work study earlier, was I think that this is a subject where we have a lot of complexity of communication. So I think starting off with some of those visuals that are in our buildings and our schools, making things very simple on what's the expectation in a given scenario so that our students can have that reminder all the time. I love seeing those examples. I do wonder how we extend that same sort of simplistic treatment to the adults in the process. Looking at the handbooks, which was interesting, Dr. Bailey, you mentioned that the parents sign off on the handbooks, not the students. And so maybe we should just call them parent handbooks. So, hey, parents, this is for you, and this other thing is for students. But even in the version that parents are seeing, I think they are very long in amount of words. They're very complex. They still a bit on the legalistic side. And so I think we have an opportunity to just be a bit more plain and our language. I think I was reading, I think it was a Dee Dee's report. And one of the things that she called out in their comment that was made in there was about, you know, our goal is restorative practices. I don't think we ever state that plainly someplace, right? Our goal is to make sure we, you know, what is our philosophy in discipline? And so I think we just can be a lot plainer in how we're communicating. I also, you know, I don't want to, while the numbers are small, I don't want to downplay that when there is an incident that's big at the moment, that's big in that building, that's big to those people who were directly impacted. I would never want to downplay it, but what we do also battle with the perception that happens on retelling of story, on social media posting, that creates an environment of more focus on these very rare incidences than I think is really in line with the reality of what's happening at times. So I don't want to downplay the seriousness of anyone, you know, instance. So I think that bears our opportunity of how can we be more clear in communicating what is the current state of affairs in very simple terms, right? We see, you know, maybe it's in a communication that talks about our year-over-year discipline experiences across elementary, middle, and high as just what would frankly be a downward going chart so that people can understand that. So I think, again, which is probably my topic of the evening, is how are we clear on what's our approach to discipline, which is going to be restorative? How are we clear that we aren't a private school, so students are going to be welcome back into our buildings? I think that's something else our community struggles with, right? The kids will come back because those are the rules we play by. And here are the procedures we have in place to help understand the expectations and welcome children back into our community in this rare cases that they do have extreme examples. So I think this is just another area where we have to dramatically simplify and not be, I think we're also not communicating enough for some reason on this topic. It's like, well, I don't want to communicate too much or share too much about discipline. I think we should just share it. Like, this is an important message to people. They want to know that their kids are safe. Our incidences are going down year over year, and not be shy about communicating that.
Thank you for that feedback.
Any other board comments and reflections? Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead, Christian.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring up something that was mentioned a little bit earlier about students not being able to unaware where to find the handbook, or even after finding it, you know, being able to understand it, because it is pretty extensive. It is a lot of words, and so even those students who do take that initiative to find the handbook, oftentimes either myself or students who do find it, you know, hard to either interpret when you're presented a lot of like a block of text, you know. It is a lot harder to understand that and kind of get to the meaning. And so I do believe that simplifying it or like dumbing it down would allow a lot of students to understand it a lot more easily, because not everyone, you know, really wants to read that giant paragraph detailing everything. And the other thing would be subtle reminders towards like second semester. I know this is something that was brought up in both the reports, but school year is pretty long. It's like 9 or 10 months. And so one reminder at the start of the school year, well, helpful. Students often can forget. And I think reminding towards start of second semester in those SEL classes about the expectations and stuff could, you would see like a reduction in those numbers even further than they already are. So
Appreciate that. It's like the flashing speed limit signs, even though we know what the speed limit is. Like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what we're supposed to do. Okay. Any other thoughts and reflections? Yeah, Naomi.
I'm not sure if this has already been detailed, but for the report on EL or OE 11, all the data there is separated only by type of school, so elementary, middle school, high school. Is there any data that we can put out that's separating the different schools? Because we know that there have been more reports of like issues in Issaquah Middle School than perhaps the other middle schools.
Sure. I appreciate the question from the state. Agreed upon suppression rules. The numbers are so small that if you were to break it apart by schools, almost all the data is going to be suppressed anyway. So it is actually more clear representation when you put them together by levels.
Thank you.
Good question. We asked that question already too. Any other questions? No. And I know we didn't talk a lot about the data here because we did in our work study prior to this meeting. Because our meeting started at 4.
I just really quickly wanted to say I appreciate the use of positive community norms and messaging. So rather than not to do, to be what we do. This is how we are. This is our expectation. And it's from a positive standpoint. And there's a lot of science of the positive data out there.
Agreed.
I'd love to also just know curiosity as you've implemented school security officers broadly across our district from where it was just 3 like school resource officers and how that correlates with decreasing incidents or not. So, because I think sometimes we wonder like, what are we doing and what is the benefit of it? And I think this might be one that actually shows a likely connection. So, without any further questions or comments, I think we're ready for a vote from our students first. Okay.
What do we have?
4 yes, 2 no. Alrighty. And for board, all those in favor of operational expectation 11, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Oh, there you go. And that brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is board policy update 4.3 to operational expectation 14 instructional program.
I actually haven't been able to pull up the agenda on my computer all night. So can somebody else read that one? Okay, I got it on my phone. Possible, oh, I don't have the actual
Yeah, it's actually not in there.
motion.
The motion's not in there.
Is there not a motion?
No, so you need to just make one.
So I move we approve board policy update to operational expectation 14 instructional program as presented.
Second.
Okay. We will open it up to public input. Is there any public input in the room or on Zoom? No. I see none in the room and I don't see any on Zoom. Okay, so this we have talked about. You just go scroll up, see into the top, the small parts that we have spent a lot of time on. It's a little bit more. There you go. Oh, yeah, right there. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time talking about this, so I'm not sure how much more we do need to talk about it, but did want to open up for any additional board comments or reflections. I appreciate Tashida and your information that you provided. That was super helpful. So, and I think affirmative of the direction we're headed. And yeah. Any board reflections?
I do not. No, I the language is reflective of the conversation we had, so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Naomi.
I just had a question on like if we did pass this, that would mean Skyline would have to implement AP classes within their curriculums, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then when would that be required? Because obviously not this school year, I'm assuming, but the next one in 3 years, because I know there's a lot of training and like staff orientation that needs to go on if AP does get moved into Skyline.
Well, we would expect probably a very intentionally staged implementation. And so the first year might not have much, but I would expect the first year to have some next year.
Okay, sounds good.
But I will be asking that question of our superintendent after we get past this vote. So stay tuned. Any other reflections? Oh, sorry, Director Mullins.
Yes, thank you. So I am particularly happy with this version of the language, and I think it captures well the culmination of even many topics we've talked about tonight, like across the various topics. So, and ensuring that the program has opportunities for students to develop talents and interests. Right, we talked about that with the high school, the secondary innovation topic, making sure we've got opportunities across the schools and what that could look like. And so I just think that not only does it capture our conversations well, but I think the discussions we've had along this evening has highlighted that this is the right direction. So I'm very pleased with it.
Anything else? Then I'll just reflect and say I appreciate the board's engagement through this process. We are now more than 3 months in from when we kicked off this conversation, even formally and informally, even longer. And we have heard lots and lots of feedback and had lots and lots of dialogue about that. So I do feel and hope others feel like we have provided ample opportunity for input. So if there is if there's no more board reflections or thought, there is. No. Then we have a vote in front of us. And so the students, I think, go first. Okay, so Sydney, it's 4 yes, 0 no for students. And for board update, policy update for operational expectation 14, particularly 14.3 A and B. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay. Thank you. Long work, long journey. And so now I will pivot and ask the same question that Naomi was asking is while not holding you to it. I'm sure it's been something your team has thought about as you watch this 3-month journey about, any sort of initial thoughts that you could share with us.
Well, I know that through the course of this process that Principal Keith Henne has been working to consider how this might, be implemented in a staged approach, but also taking into account the other points of feedback that were surfaced during the conversations amongst the board and also reflected in public comment and from students. So including the listening session that was conducted. I'm happy to bring some more details at the next board meeting in December. Now that this has been officially approved by the board in terms of the language, and the timing is right because we are preparing for course catalogs for next year. And there's, a little bit of a hustle. It's not untenable in terms of the timing. And so we are thinking that there can be some shifts for next year. And that was the intent, I think, by doing this conversation starting in the earlier part of the, just before the school year started. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Is that sufficient? Okay, perfect. Next item on our agenda is legislative matters. Director Taylor.
That's me. Yes. Only thing is I've had some preliminary discussions with former Senator Mark Mullet. No, he's still, no, former, former Senator Mark Mullet. Also with new Senator Bill Ramos, and with our new state rep, Victoria Hunt, about getting together and having some discussions before they go into session in January. So all three of them are willing to sit down and talk. I'm just curious of my board colleagues who perhaps would like to join me for any of those discussions.
I think historically you set the date and time and then it's kind of first come, first
First
served
come,
once-
first served.
'cause
Okay.
it's all about what availability we may or may not have. So you build it around your schedule and their schedule, and that's hard enough. Cats
Yeah.
heard, and then we can
Whoever-
join as
Okay,
available.
very good. We'll
Because
look
trying to
for-
coordinate with you and the superintendent and whoever her designee is, as well as the state leader is hard enough.
Yes.
And so once you get that all synced, let us know, and then one of us usually joins.
Okay, very good. We'll look for that communication. I should hear soon. So that's all. That's all the docket for me.
Anything, Director Roberts? No? Perfect.
I mean, other than the fact that I have a dread that the Department of Education is going to get obliterated sometime in January. No, I don't have anything else on my docket.
Hard to follow. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is announcements and correspondence. Anything else? Seeing none. Next item is calendar and future agenda topics. So I did ask for a superintendent to attach an updated monitoring calendar. We do have a couple slight adjustments to it on dates. Otherwise, I think the content is there and updated just for you to be able to reflect on. It wasn't with intended to say here are changes necessarily, but just so you have it to see it in a cleaner copy. Is that summary?
Yep, that's accurate. We had to just tighten things up. Things moved around. We want to make it, this is basically the work plan of the board. And so it is a plan and doesn't need to get approved. It's just being notifying the board of the adjustments that are being made. And we've done this before. We will update almost immediately just the minor changes to the dates that the years are sometimes mixed up with 24, 25, which happens when you're in a 2 calendar year school year.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then we have calendaring to do, our most favorite thing to do. So we'll go in reverse order. So Director Mullins and I met with leadership from Issaquah City Council, and they would like to have a joint meeting together at dates of March 24th or March 31st. And I think we would lean towards the 6 o'clock timeframe unless there was someone that has a reason why they can't. So we do need to let them know by tomorrow morning. So this is something that we do need to make a decision on. So get your handy dandy calendars out and look at March 24th.
I can't do the 24th. I can do the 31st.
Okay, well then look at March 31st.
I can make that work. That's 6, Lisa.
March 31st, 6 p.m. Director Mullins? I see thumbs up from everyone, but do I see 5 thumbs up? Okay. There you go. March 31st, 6 p.m. Mark it on your calendar.
Good.
And then we will let you know the location when we get it. We have offered up one of our school buildings. They really want us to be focused on more time for social and conversation and dialogue. So I think that a restaurant would be hard because just the configuration isn't such that for 12 people to get up and chat, as well as I think it's kind of noisy. So, but they are the ones that ultimately will make the decision because they're hosting. The next is to reschedule the June 12th board meeting. And this one would require action at the next meeting, I think is how we would generally do it. But we are looking to reschedule that because that is graduation day at
Oh, it is indeed.
T-Mobile Park. Yeah, I guess, can you give us some suggestions to have us start looking from your side? Because this is where you get to drive this one.
Yes.
I believe that Wednesday is out of question. Is that correct? June 11th?
I would not be able to be there until after 7. I have a board meeting from 5:30 to 7. I mean, I could do it virtually here and then join if that ends up being the date that everyone decides.
Okay.
Just keeping in that same week with the goal.
I'd
yeah.
probably, I guess I would say don't schedule it around me because I have a senior graduating that week. So that's probably not going to work. But again, just exclude me from that, because if it works that week and I can try to make it, but
You get excused. You get a free pass. Like,
sounds good.
like
All right.
Yeah, the options that week are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, keep in the same week to keep in our 2-week cadence.
Yeah.
So I do know that there's a ISF board meeting on the books already for the Tuesday, which is their typical day and typical sequence of the month. But those are it doesn't preclude this group from meeting, just
The
FYI.
10th does work. I don't have anything in the evening. So especially if we know we're going to be down a member.
Yes.
I can do the 10th.
Sydney.
The 10th is fine.
Okay, let's set the schedule for the 10th, our normal time. The parts that we're normally at the foundation is usually 5:30 anyway.
It's usually that 5:30. It's their celebration, which is a less formal meeting.
Where is it going to be at?
I have noted it's Blakely Hall.
That'll be hard to be two places at once.
Yes.
Or
but this
depending
one-
on what's on there, if you could do 7:00 on Wednesday, I could just do my other board meeting remotely here because it's a remote meeting anyway. I could do that here and then walk in and be ready by 7:05
Wednesday, is that what you said?
on the 11th. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my only concern is generally we would have a work study there because it is about results one, our mission. So it is an important one to have early time. So I think I would lean towards Tuesday and have to give regrets to ISF.
Okay.
But I'm looking for I don't have super strong
Yeah.
feelings
I can do
about
it Monday
this.
too. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah. I can do Monday as well. I just know that's hard on staff to have.
Yeah, I know staff usually has not liked the idea of a Monday. That's why we've never scheduled it on a Monday. So I think I'd rather do Tuesday to give regrets to ISF unless you tell us no, we'd rather do Monday and go to ISF.
I think I'd prefer Tuesday and give regrets to ISF.
Okay.
That meeting is, again, it's more of a celebration event, which is nice to do, but there's not as much business for us to.
I wonder too, if ISF, not speaking for them, but if they have enough notice, I wonder if they would even be able to shift the timing on that event too. Just a thought. I mean, we're several months out.
It's going to be tight, as you know, graduation and
I know.
all the PTA
I
things
know.
that happen.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we will tentatively pencil in Tuesday starting at 5 p.m. for a work study and continuing on. And last, superintendent evaluation. So we will look for May. And let's start looking. I guess, Sydney, are you gone anytime in early May that I need to be aware of at this point? Start avoiding weeks that you're out of the country.
I'm looking. First week looks okay. Not the 15th.
Okay. Can we look
Yeah.
around Thursday, May 8th?
So we have a board meeting the 15th.
We have a board meeting.
On May 8th?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, we want Thursday, May 8th. We clearly see I haven't loaded any board meetings on.
And then I'm out the last week of May. I'm gone.
So what about it'd be the 1st then?
Thursday, the 1st could work for me. In the evening, right?
Works for me.
That works for me.
Again, as long as I could start 6 or later.
Yeah. Where will you be physically before that?
Well, I have a virtual executive
virtual.
committee meeting.
Okay.
From 4:30 to 5:30. But I run those. It's helpful if I can do that from my desk at home because I have screens everywhere.
So we'd say May 1st at what time?
I think 6. 6 to 9.
Or
Or should
6:30.
we just be honest and say 6 to 10?
I was being honest by saying 6. I was being honest and saying 6 to 9. Certainly. Last year was like 2. Yeah, it was pretty close
At least
last
start-
year.
At least we know it starts at 6. We just need to know the starting time, I guess.
And then the second one, May 29th.
Board meeting.
I'm really struggling. Or maybe I'm trying to,
Is there a reason, did we move that from the 22nd to the 29th?
I think because of the holiday, my
It's Labor Day. That's true. It's
My
it's
guess.
the 26th. So that's why we moved.
June 3rd or 4th.
Those work for me.
Those both work for me.
Yeah, I could make either of those work.
Yeah, I'm okay on those.
It's a full month later. Let's see. I don't know if that matters.
Strongly about it being the 3rd or the 4th, Tuesday or a Wednesday.
Wednesday's easier for me, but it's not as strong.
Sure, I don't.
It's stronger than I have. So.
Yeah, that's fine if we do June 4th. I'm good.
Okie dokie.
Same time, 6 p.m.
6 to 9.
4%.
Sounds good.
Could you please repeat the first date that you picked?
May 1st, wasn't it May 1st?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, you had it.
Oh, I'm jumping the gun. I think I'm jumping the gun, but are we going to talk about a community listening session on the bond? Because that's got to happen like stat.
Yeah, sure. But so do you want to?
Or not. I mean, we don't have to. I don't know. I just thought.
No, it's fine. Cool. Yeah,
I thought we had made that decision. But
yeah, I'm just getting input on both sides. So this.
This is where at the end of the meeting, little things you're like, you need to bring forward, get brought forward. I have a go back to the monitoring calendar. So we'll once the motion is made next meeting to officially change the date of the June meeting, we will update that on this and provide a new update of this monitoring calendar as well to reflect the actual meeting date. The second is I wanted to bring forward one topic, which is that the past practice for executive limitations, one, which was executive constraint formerly known as, and then financial administration came in 2 parts, an internal and an external. And the reason why there was an external is because that was where we captured the financial audits, the single accountability of federal audits. And those were happening in May or June, but then we were doing financial administration and executive constraint again in August through early September or October. And that had all the same information plus the audit. So we've been out of the timeline to do the externals because our audits have been delayed. And that's kind of created this overlapping audit confusion, reporting confusion about which year we're in and which audit year we're in. And we've asked around and including consulted with Director Moraldo, look back in our own records and also had some discussions with even board members of the past to understand where it came from. And that even preceded the former board member, Director Weaver, of why internal external happened, but it was driven by the audit timeline and it got pulled apart. So my recommendation and our team's recommendation is that we consolidate. We don't have these internal externals, which was already confusing. It already captures the audit and we make those happen because since we've already done it this year, we make those happen in August next year. And that would be then included on the next monitoring calendar approval in June. And they would be struck from this one for this year because we just did OE1 and we just did OE5 times.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes, so we're consolidating.
Yes.
Consolidating, so removing them from this calendar. They will show up on August of the next year's monitoring calendar and it will include the audit.
Awesome.
Audits. Okay.
I would like this attached to our next agenda and I would like us to
course.
formally approve it.
Okay.
since now we're making
That's,
changes.
that's a sub.
Okay, yes, that's what I wanted to ask about.
Yep.
I didn't want to make that assumption now, but
Yep.
that's the cue up for that. So I saw head nods that will make that strike through edit and then show a clean version as well. Thank you.
So Monday, December 9th or Tuesday, December 10th?
Either one?
Tuesday, December
So my preference would be the 9th.
Wait, what is this date for?
This is for the
Wait.
committee. Sorry, I shut my.
Oh, I think I do have an event on
This
that.
is for,
think I have
Sydney's
the
for
BEC
feedback on the bond.
This is.
Have some listening sessions about the bond.
Monday, December 9th or
Either's fine.
Oh, no, I don't.
Monday or Tuesday of December 9th or 10th. So I would prefer Monday, but
Monday's easier for me, but
Monday's fine.
That's fine.
so I think we should do back-to-back ones. Like I think we should do one in Issaquah, one in Sammamish, and then just stagger them so that we go from one to the other.
In the same
on the
night.
Same night. Yep.
So doing it December 9th, same night. Okay.
Yep. And doing two of them. Okay, so we will tentatively set that for let's see. Like 5:30 and 7:30. And it'll be based on which building availability there is, and you tell us. So
So we're doing
but
like a north, south or what?
I would thinking like Cougar Mountain Middle School would be the ideal location for one, and then probably Pine Lake Middle School or Skyline High School, one of the two. For the other.
I will say Cougar. Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say Cougar. We just have to be aware Cougar Mountain. It's hard to get to. Would be the. I would say if we're trying to do that at 5:30, I've been caught in that.
Yeah, I would not.
That is not a.
I would not recommend that one
Yeah.
And the parking.
Yeah.
unless it's the later time.
Then we.
Yeah.
Okay, well then. It could be the later time. I'm just trying to. I think it's more accessible to get to Cougar Mountain from the south end of our district than it is to go to Issaquah High School. That's the only reason why I was.
Yeah, if you're coming from the Liberty area, it's
Right.
easy to pop up
That's what.
900.
Mhm. I went to an event there at 5:30 last year and it was I was like an hour late because it was just a parking lot. I went in, I would say we do 7 for that 7:30 would be the one.
Yeah.
I think
Agreed.
location wise, it's great. It's just, I'd say later.
Okie dokie. So I think we've heard ideally find us a building on the plateau. Okie dokie. Thank you, Director Taylor. Any other things to add right now? No. At the end, you can come up, talk to us in 1 minute, 1 second. Anything else? Alrighty. Thank you. Meeting is